Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Vanguard Wall. This is an episode that's been in the works, in the makes for a couple months now. You were supposed to come, I think, in February?
Or it was January.
January.
Got snowed out.
Yeah, and I'm actually glad because it gave us like another couple months to prep, plan, talk, get to know each other. And I'm super excited for your story, for your testimony, and the topics that we're going to talk about. I know you've done a couple other podcasts. You were on the Team House, Hookstead's podcast, and I think Combat Story, all great stories. If you guys haven't heard those, go check them out. We're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about some different stuff. We're definitely going to talk about, your faith, which is huge to me. It's important to a lot of our listeners, and it's something that's definitely been kind of left out of your story. It's a big part of who you are. So I'm definitely excited to tell that part of the story. So before we get started, I want to do a solid interview for you, or a solid intro, so our listeners know a little bit about you. So welcome to the Vanguard Wall Podcast, where we dig into the marrow of lives forged in fire and faith. Today we sit with a man who's walked through hell and come out preaching hope. David Mike Edwards, who goes by Mike. This isn't just a story, it's a testament. Picture a kid at Marion Military Institute, ROTC pins gleaming, mastering military science, set for an officer's life. But Mike Edwards doesn't follow paths, he carves them. He drops the commission, enlists in the U.S. Army, eyes locked on special operations. 3 years in the ranks, stationed in Korea when 9/11 shakes the world. With weeks left, he re-enlists, but not for duty, but for the fight with the 75th Ranger Regiment. 3rd Battalion becomes his battlefield. Rifleman, fire team leader, squad leader, 18 deployments, 5 years, 10 months, and 15 days in a combat zone. Afar, Iraq, 2005. He boots a grenade to save his brothers, shrapnel ripping him into him. A Purple Heart pins to his chest, a Silver Star to join it. Valor under fire. 3 Bronze Stars stacked beside them, each a chapter of courage across deserts and mountains. Then the Regimental Reconnaissance Company, or RRC, the military's most secretive unit. 40-mile marches, 100-pound packs, 11 months of lockpicking, interrogation resistance, and mission planning. He emerges as a shadow, countless clandestine operations with the CIA, commanding over 700 fighters in the Horn of Africa, a master sergeant by 2011. Back to 3rd Battalion in 2013, he turns a mortar platoon into a lethal Swiss Army knife. Yuma in 2015, 5,000 freefall jumps as NCOIC, teaching warriors to strike from the sky. Retirement hits in March of 2019, but Mike doesn't rest. He trains SEALs and MARSOC in freefall tactics, consults on security, and leads the USPA nationwide titanium service. Ex-Rangers and SEAL Team 6 vets guarding Madonna, Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Tom Brady, and the list goes on. Mike's a founder of Project Exodus Relief. He marshaled 150 souls across 15 countries to pull Americans and Afghans soft from chaos, all while storming D.C. to demand accountability. His voice booming on Fox News, Newsmax, and the Team House podcast. But the medals, silver, bronze, purple, don't tell the whole tale. Wounded, scarred, living with disability, Mike Edwards now thrives off the land, a husband, a father, and a pastor. He tills the soil, raises a family, and teaches the Bible online, a shepherd in a digital flock. From 5 years, 10 months, and 15 days of war to a quiet homestead, he's traded the rifle for the word, leading souls through diversity as he once led Rangers through fire.
That's awesome. The way you worded that it just humbles me, man.
Yeah, that took a while, man. And I'm sure that doesn't even,
You're a wordsmith, that's for sure.
Over this next 4 to 6 hours, we're going to walk the Odyssey from the chaos of Afar to the peace of the pulpit, from 5,000 jumps to a life grounded in faith. Strap in. This is a story of blood, sweat, and salvation. Mike, before we just dive on in, it's an honor to share the room with you. I've gotten to know you over these last couple months, and you're a great human being. You're helping a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on that you don't talk about on the internet or on your YouTube channel. And I've got a little chance to see your heart. So on behalf of me and my family, thank you for who you are, and thank you for what you're doing.
Well, thanks for having me, brother.
You've worn many hats: Ranger, husband, father, pastor. If you still had to distill your life into one core value that carried you through, what would it be, brother?
I would say ultimately just never quit. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things that we're going to encounter that you're going to have to persevere through. And I tried to struggle and tried not to quit anything, but not only just to not quit for myself, but I'm lucky that my wife and my kid didn't quit on me. Because a lot of the stuff that I did in the military was really challenging, took me away from them. I wasn't always the nicest guy, but thank God I had my wife and kid that have my back still to this day. And the fact that they never quit on me is what kept me successful, honestly, because, we can't endure, an arduous career, without the assistance of our wife and family, you know what I mean? Without them behind our backs.
Yeah. That's a great point, man. I think family is often overlooked. We've talked about it with several different guests on the podcast, especially those of us that have been married, over 20 years. That's something I want to dive in to this podcast. This is going to be a long haul podcast. I'm sure people are getting used to kind of how we run our podcast here. But I just wanted to give a brief little something for our listeners who are going to stick with us on this ride. What's one story you've never told on a podcast that you're ready to unpack with us? And you don't have to unpack the whole story just right here, but I just want to give people a little teaser.
I think one of them is, doing the Omega stuff. I've talked about some of that stuff, but there was one time where I was going out with their AFO team basically to recce, I'm not going to go into the details on how we recce'd, but we would go out and recce the targets to make sure that the bad guys were where we thought they were going to be before we go and kick in the door. So what I would do is we would ride out, maybe 5 to 10 minutes ahead of the assault force. Assault force would be kind of staged, and we'd go in there and then just try to find out where the bad guys were there. We pulled up this one house down this alleyway. The building was on the right. There's like a long corridor, and there was 2 guys wearing Afghan National Army uniforms. So we're thinking they're supposed to be allies, but we roll up and they come up and start questioning us. Come to find out they're employed by the Taliban. They're like, hey, you guys aren't supposed to be here. We're going to call the Taliban on you. We're like, all right, cool. So we call up to our assault force. We're like, hey, be prepared to come get us because they're saying they're calling the Taliban on us. So we sit there, our interpreters are trying to talk their way out. It's just me and one ground branch guy in the vehicle. And I'm like in the back just as an extra shooter, and he's running the stuff that we have. Well, anyway, all of a sudden we see like down this alley, it's like a couple dudes and more dudes and then more dudes. And it's like probably 20 or 30 dudes running at us with like RPGs, RPKs, PKMs, AKs, all that stuff running from about 400 or 500 meters down this alley. We can see them. Mind you, it's at nighttime. So I'm talking to the ground branch dude. I'm like, hey, if these guys keep coming and they come to roll us up, I'm going to hop out of the back of this thing and start laying down suppressive fire. You guys just throw it in reverse, hit the main highway, go 1 kilometer down to the south, and I'll meet you there. So I literally thought I was about to die, like hopping out and shooting these dudes up. So it's literally a countdown to like 10 seconds. And then we're like waiting. I got my hand on the back latch, getting ready to open it up and hop out and start engaging these dudes so that our vehicle can get out of there. And about that time, the convoy with the assault force, with all of our dudes, all the Indage, all the ground branch guys come flying around the corner, and all those dudes disperse like cockroaches. So it was pretty sketchy, but luckily we didn't even have to fire a shot,
Yeah. That sounds like divine intervention.
Yeah, could be.
Dude, thanks for sharing that. So we're going to kind of start, where it all began. We do long form bio interviews, man. So, I know you told the story a couple times, but, can you kind of take us kind of at the beginning of your childhood, maybe where you grew up, brothers, sisters, family, whatever it is you're willing to share?
Yeah. So I was born in Selma, Alabama, grew up in that area. Have a little brother, 2.5 years younger than me. We grew up playing in the woods, shooting BB guns, running around the woods, playing cowboys and Indians, things like that, shooting BB guns, hunting and stuff like that. Then went to school. In school, I made good grades most of the way through. Up until about high school, I was pretty much an A student. And then in high school, I started slacking a little bit, making some C's and D's. And well, I don't know about D's, but maybe some C's and stuff like that. Played baseball, played football 1 year. Didn't really like it. My mom wasn't really into me playing football because all of her brothers got broken playing football in high school. So she was against it. Ended up living with my mom after my parents got a divorce. And so she wouldn't let me do the football. So I stayed playing baseball, and I was pretty good at baseball. But then we moved to a new school and or moved to a new area. And so I was the new guy. So it was like earning your way onto the team the whole time. So I played good. I was playing a lot better than the other guys, but I sat on the bench a lot. Then eventually got to play ball. Also played the drums in the high school marching band. A lot of people are like, you were in the band? Yeah, it was cool. I played the drums, did that stuff. Then after that, went to Marion Military Institute, went to college, and started, I joined the National Guard while I was a junior in high school. Back it up for that. Joined the National Guard while I was in high school, and then I got a taste of the military, and that made me want to go to be an officer and go to Marion. And so that's like the initial part right there.
What, like growing up, did you play a lot in the woods? Like, were you like kind of an outdoor dude?
Yeah, we lived out in the country in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there was like a highway, a U.S. highway that was like nobody that lived within miles of us. So me and my brother, our closest friends, were our pastor's kids down the road, and we would ride our bike like 3 or 4 miles down the road to their house and hang out with them. But there was nobody around. It was just me and my brother playing together, as kids out in the woods. We would go miles and miles back in the woods back in the day on private property. It wasn't our property, but back then nobody really cared. If you're a kid and you're just trespassing, as long as you're not tearing anything up, nobody really cared. So we'd be all over the place back in like private property, walking in the woods, hunting birds, digging in rabbit holes, what, just exploring as a kid,
How did the military come on your radar?
Well, my dad was in the military. He was in the National Guard and then went active duty. And so he never pushed it on me or anything like that. But he, just seeing him in the military, I just knew about it. And then, I don't know, it was just one day I just decided, hey, I kind of want to join the National Guard. So I went to the local National Guard unit, which was a communications unit, signed up there, and then they sent me off to basic training, and then came back from that, drilled with that unit for about a year. And then after my senior year of high school, I shipped off to AIT. By then, I had already decided that I didn't want to be a commo guy. So I had reclassed to be infantry because I went to boot camp and then came back. And so then they sent me to infantry AIT. And then I joined an infantry National Guard unit up in Pelham, up in North Alabama. And I was drilling with that unit while I was in ROTC in college.
Talk to me about ROTC.
So ROTC was good. I enjoyed it. There was a lot of good people there. I was really good at the military science stuff. I was really good at PT. Had one of the highest PT scores in the class, if not the highest PT score. Was really good at all the tactical stuff, but there was a couple teachers that I didn't get along with. And some of their subjects I didn't really like that much, like English literature. And then there was a math class I didn't like. So I ended up struggling on a couple classes there. Honestly, I was partying too much. I wasn't really focused, just having fun. And so I was falling behind in some of those classes. So after about 2 years, I was getting ready to get commissioned because it was an early commissioning program. And then I was going to have to take a summer school class in the summer. And I was like, you know what, the heck with this. I'm not going to come back for summer school. I don't even want to be an officer anymore. So I withdrew failing and then went back and then went and did some work for a little bit and then ended up enlisting active duty in the Army.
So you came in as just 11 Bravo?
Yeah.
Infantry?
Well, actually I was 11 Mike.
Mechanized.
So I was mechanized infantry to start
They still
off.
have that? Is that still around?
Yeah. Still there. Yeah. So I was 11 Mike. I went to 3rd ID, bouncing around in Bradleys, doing a bunch of training. I've been in a Bradley for 24 straight hours without getting out, peeing out of the drain holes before. I mean, it's just crazy. But it was cool and all, but it's just not what I thought the Army was going to be. We didn't really get to shoot a lot. We were just riding around in Bradleys, working on Bradleys, maintaining, sweeping, cutting grass. I mean, we were just like glorified janitors through my time in the regular Army. So by the end of my first 3-year enlistment, I was in Korea and I was dead set on getting out. I couldn't stand the military. I thought I was going to be shooting guns. I thought I was going to be blowing stuff up and going after bad guys. And that just wasn't the case. But then again, we weren't at war.
Yeah, I was a peacetime Army back then. And, there wasn't much going on unless you were at the shiny tip of the spear, really.
Yep. So, there wasn't a whole lot going on there. So I was getting out of the Army. I couldn't stand it. I hated it. And then all of a sudden 9/11 happens. And I'm like, man, now we're at war.
Walk me through that. I like to talk to all my guests, especially those of us that are older. A lot of us remember where we were. Can you tell me where you were 9/11 and kind of how that day played out in your mind?
Yeah, I was in Korea and had been at the gym working out with some of my buddies. Came back from the gym, walked back into my barracks room. And then as soon as I walked into the barracks room, my roommate was in there and the TV was on and you could see the Twin Towers up there smoking. And so we just watched it. And we're like, dang, we're about to be at war. And so after that, I was like, hey, we're going to war. And then eventually a little bit later on, we went to war. And I was like, I got to re-enlist, man. I got to stay in the military and fight for my country. So I re-enlisted to go to the Ranger Regiment.
How'd the Ranger Regiment pop up kind of on your radar?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question because I didn't I had never even heard of the Ranger Regiment, really. I knew about Special Forces. I had already trained up and done the PT test and all that stuff for Special Forces before I went to Korea. But ended up going to Korea and they couldn't get me out of the orders. But I never knew anything about the Ranger Regiment. But then I get to Korea and I had this squad leader that was there with me that had been in one of the Ranger battalions. And he said, we were doing this ruck march, this 30-mile ruck march they do there. And it's called the Manchu Mile. And he was like, man, I love ruck marching. I loved it back then. And I'm like, man, I love this stuff. We're like 15 miles into this 30-mile march. And I'm like eating some food. I'm like, man, I love this stuff. And this dude's like, if you love this stuff, you want to go be a Ranger. And I was like, really? Like, what do they do? And he started telling me about it. And he was like, if you want to go to combat, like you really want to go to combat and kill bad guys, he's like, SF is cool and all. You can go there. It takes longer to get in there. And you may or may not see any DA stuff. But he said, if you go to Ranger Battalion, you're going to get in there. You're going to be kicking indoors, killing bad guys. And I was like, okay. So I re-enlisted for the Ranger Regiment and then 3rd Ranger Battalion because I wanted to get closer to home. And then that's how it started off.
So how does it go when you, re-enlist, you go straight to the Ranger Regiment? Did you just PCS to Benning or how did that work?
So I PCS to Benning with orders to RIP. It's RASP now, but it was RIP. And then I showed up to the RIP building, was terrified when I showed up because I had started digging in on Rangers and I found out that they were just like brutal in the way, like they were just hard on everybody. And so I was kind of scared, terrified when I signed in, but I signed in. There was just a private at the desk. He's like, yep, put your stuff up in the barracks. Nobody messed with me. And then the next day we came down to formation and that's when it all kicked off. And it was just absolutely just brutal. It was just brutal. Getting our teeth kicked in.
Just for RIP? Yeah.
They just want to weed out as many people as possible. And they try to do it front loaded. Well, I was cadre there later on, so I understand how it works. But they're just trying to get rid of as many people up front as you possibly can, because if you get rid of those dudes, now you can focus the training on the guys that actually care and that are going to make it. So it's just everything is set up. All the fitness stuff is just to tear you down and to make you quit right off the bat.
We've had a couple Rangers come on the podcast. I guess one of the questions I want to ask you is, and these guys have talked about it, is there a certain number, like you were, end up being a RIP RASP instructor later. Is there like a certain number, like, this RIP class comes in, you can only take 10. So you've got to get rid of X amount of people regardless. Is there any truth to that or?
Yeah, I've never seen any numbers. Typically the regiment has like a number that they're looking for that they need, but they don't just take dudes just to fill those numbers. They'll weed dudes out. And like I've had classes when I was RIP cadre that probably were close to 300 dudes. And I've had classes that were like right at about 100 dudes. The smallest class I think we graduated when I was a RIP cadre was like 12 or 13 dudes.
Really?
Yeah. But on average, I think we would graduate like 40 to 60 guys, maybe 70 guys per class, depending on the size of the class. Some of the bigger classes, we get more people like.
Could you sniff out like weakness and you knew guys that weren't going to make it through? So you guys just try to really turn it on them to get them to quit early?
Yeah, you can see it in these guys. The interesting thing is you'd have a lot of these guys that were football stars. They were high school football stars. They were bigger than everybody, stronger than everybody. They would come to the regiment and they would absolutely get destroyed. You'd have some country boy, little scrawny kid from daggum North Carolina in the mountains somewhere that would come out of the woodwork and outperform these dudes, because these dudes had the physical prowess to make it, but they didn't have the mental capability to push through it. So when things got hard, I saw some of these toughest dudes just drop off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we're going to hit that a little bit later on in the interview. I know there's we've had a lot of feedback sometimes on, Ranger School and getting into. So I do a little bit later on this podcast want to discuss mindset and give some of our listeners that may be interested in going into the Ranger Regiment down the road, a couple leg ups. I have a couple friends, actually their sons are, one's I think getting ready to go to RIP and the other one's waiting to go. So,
nice.
So you get through RIP obviously, and you show up. Did you find out at RIP? Did you know where you were going? Like what battalion?
Yeah, I actually, because I was already in the military, I had re-enlisted with orders to 3rd Ranger Battalion.
Oh, really?
So I had orders. It was kind of weird. I don't know if they had to necessarily honor that, but that's where I went. I went to 3rd Ranger Battalion. And so I went to Alpha Company, 3rd Ranger Battalion, and I started off in 1st Platoon and then ended up going over to 3rd Platoon as a squad leader.
How was that showing up to the regiment?
It's brutal. Because you don't have a tab, you're a private. It doesn't, even though I was an E4 and I've been in the Army like 4 years, I was a private and I was just like everybody else that didn't have a tab. And there's just every day, man, you're getting destroyed from like the outset. Like first thing going out in the morning, there's formation, and you got Rangers that are all across the board with all these different schools, right? The squad leaders and the platoon sergeants got all these different schools. So they'll say like, if you ain't got a tab, hit the slab. If you ain't got free fall, hit the slab. If you ain't got sniper qualified, hit the slab. If you're not Pathfinder qualified, hit the slab. And like as a private, you're hitting the slab for every one of these because you don't have any of these courses. So you're just getting smoked. And even the E5s and E6s are getting a little scuffed up because the E7s have a lot of schools that they don't have. It's just kind of like a rite of passage thing. Like, hey, once you are like me and you have all these schools, you don't have to do all these push-ups anymore. So it drives you and motivates you to want to go to these schools. And not only that, the schools are cool anyway. But that happens, and then you go out and do brutal PT every day. I mean, my squad leader at the time, this guy, John, I won't say his last name, but this guy named John, I think he was like 36 years old at the time. And this dude could run, he could keep a sub 6 minute mile almost indefinitely. And that was not me, dude. I was like 230 pounds when I got to the Ranger Regiment, like a little bit bigger than I am now. And muscle, but I mean, dude, I'm carrying a lot of extra weight. So I had to like, it took me a while. Some of those runs were absolutely brutal, man.
What, so you get to the regiment and you get there in what, probably like late 01, 02?
02, like mid 02. Yeah, like summer of 02.
What, I mean, what were you feeling like the ramp up of what was going on with GWAT? Like, I think Afghanistan was kicking off.
Yeah, they had already deployed.
Oh, really?
They had done like 2 deployments, I think, to Afghanistan by then. So I was coming in, I had privates, E3s that were in my squad that had already been to combat like once or twice. And so then here I am, never been to combat. Now I don't have a tab. So I was the lowest dude on the totem pole because even the other privates that didn't have a tab, at least they had combat experience and I didn't. So like you have to suffer through that too. But I knew my stuff. That's the one good thing. I was always like a doctrinal kind of dude. So I studied the 7-8 and all those manuals and stuff like that. And when I got to the regiment, like nobody could question me on that stuff. I knew that. So I had the whole book pretty much memorized. So tactically and all the stuff that we're supposed to know knowledge-wise, I was sound, physically fit. I was more physically fit than most of the guys because I have been in the military longer. I already knew how to train, right? Or some of these new Rangers are still learning their bodies. So physically, I didn't get messed with quite as bad, I guess, because I was a little bit fitter than some of the guys. And then I knew what I was supposed to do. So it helped.
Yeah, I bet. How long is it before you're out on your first deployment?
Probably, a little less than a year because March, I think it was sometime in March of 03, we jumped in Iraq,
Talk to me a little bit about the train up that you guys, went through that first year. I mean, you're new to the regiment. You're not new to the Army. But RIP is more of a smoke fest. I don't know that you get some tactics, right? But then you get to the regiment. Talk to me about like, the training and what you guys are kind of doing to prepare.
We did a ton of shooting. That's one of the things right off the bat that I noticed the regiment is we did a lot of shooting. We had a lot of ammo. We were clearing rooms, doing CQB, doing CQM, flat range shooting, maneuver, live fires, constantly training on everything, patrolling through the woods, ambushes, reconnaissance stuff, just constantly training, long distance movements, fitness, and all that kind of stuff. Airborne operations, we do airfield seizures and stuff like that, where we'll train to jump in and seize an airfield, do that stuff. So all that stuff is all part of the pipeline. It just goes cyclically, and we did all that stuff, and it prepared us to jump in. And then, we got the call, pushed over there, and jumped in to seize an airfield.
2003, dude. You got a 100-pound ruck on. You got a C-17. You guys are jumping out of. You're slamming into the dirt. Take us through that.
So yeah, we're on this plane. We took off in Saudi Arabia on a C-17, loaded down with a company of Rangers, all Alpha company, and we had probably some supporters and some dudes from JSOC and stuff like that attached as well. Flew in there, went up to like 35,000 feet, however high we went, and then as the plane got into where we went, they dove all the way down and pulled up at jump altitude. So we're kitted up, and no joke, like I said, we have 100-pound rucksacks on. I mean, everybody had like 100-pound rucksacks. I mean, we're maxed out carrying mortar rounds, multiple drums of saw ammo, frags, explosives, and then everything else that we need. Everybody had all this stuff. Every dude had mortar rounds. And We rucked up, and then the plane comes in and dives and pulls up. Well, mind you, while it's doing this, we're already standing up, hooked up to the cable. So, dude, as it's diving, the G's are pulling us down. Dude, the cable was like this high off the ground. It was like pulled off. Dudes are hanging onto that thing just to try not to collapse to the floor from the G's and all that weight on us. They pull up, level out, the doors open up, and I kid you not, I remember my platoon sergeant at the time, this guy, Ray Reed. He's at the door. He opens the door up, and I swear there's like dust coming in. I'm like, how's there dust? Like, you could just see kind of like this fogginess. I'm like, what the heck? We keep flying, and then all of a sudden it's like, go, 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 go. And we're going out the door, just jumping out. I get out, my parachute opens up. We have MOP level 4 on, right? Well, we didn't have the mask on. We had it in the bag, but we had the gear on, like the clothes on. So we jumped out, and then my pro mask gets between my legs, so I can't put my feet and knees together. You know what I mean? To land. Yep. And I'm like trying to get it together. So I go pull that thing out, situate it around. Boom, I hit the ground. Like, I didn't get a chance, dude. Hit the ground. But dang, like hit feet, butt, head, messed up my tailbone. I couldn't sit properly for like a month or two after that. Hit my head, knocked me silly. I get up, get my stuff on. It's freezing, dude. It's like below freezing, or right at about freezing, probably like 32, 33 degrees in Iraq at this time. I mean, just freezing cold. So we get up, we move to our assembly area, and I remember we're waiting for a second for other guys to show up because we're moving to the objective to clear it. And I remember we're all sitting there like backs together, like doing flutter kicks just to keep warm because we're so cold. Because we're kind of a little bit sweaty from being on that plane. Then we jump in, it's just cold. Then we move out.
Where'd you guys jump into?
H1. Yeah, it's a airfield out west in the western part of Iraq. We jumped into there, seized the airfield. There was this huge like oil refinery type deal. And when we jumped in, we could see like cars leaving from the area. So there was a couple people there, probably not bad guys or anything, but they took off and fled. I guess they were like, oh, there's somebody jumping in. Let's get the heck out of here. So we cleared this whole compound, not knowing if anybody's going to be there. We didn't find a soul in this whole compound. And this is a compound that really should have had an entire Ranger battalion clearing it. That's how big it was.
Oh, wow.
But we cleared it with a Ranger company, and it probably took us, I don't know, 8 hours. Yeah, 6 or 8 hours to clear it. I mean, we started at night. We cleared all through the night, and the sun was up by the time we finished clearing. It was just a huge objective.
Between, you know, the build up, the actual jump, and then the clearing, were you guys like smoked by the end of that?
Yeah, dude, we were tired, man. We had been planning and training for this for a couple weeks, hanging out in Saudi Arabia, but yeah, we were smoked, man. I think we probably gone like 24 straight hours or more by the time we got some rest. But then we found some of the buildings in there. We found spots in those buildings and just hunkered down, put security up, and then we just slept in the buildings, caught some rest, and then we operated out of there for a while, pushing out towards Haditha Dam and stuff like that.
How was that deployment for you?
It was good, but it wasn't like what I thought. You know, we jumped in, cool. I got a combat mustard stain on my, the very first time I ever go to combat, CIB, boom, all in the same shot. So I'm like, cool. I'm racking up all these badges that I get smoked for not having. Yeah. So I'm like, cool, that's good. But it was not as eventful as I thought. Like, we did a couple little ambushes. We set up some patrol bases. We ended up having a vehicle come into one of our patrol bases. I was out on a mission, but the headquarters element was there for our platoon, and a V-bid blew up, killed a couple of our guys there. So that kind of pissed us off. We did some stuff on Haditha Dam, but all the big stuff on Haditha Dam, I wasn't directly involved with it. I did fly in there and help recover some of our wounded afterwards while they were under fire a little bit. We also engaged, like, while Haditha Dam, while that big fight was going on, our platoon hit some adjacent elements to help them out, but it just wasn't what I thought. I'm like, dang, man, it's like we were shooting, but I don't know that I ever really shot anybody. Like, we're just suppressing stuff, and it's like a far distance, and you know, it just wasn't what I thought. But it was still combat. And then from there on, I just realized that it's just like that sometimes. Sometimes you may do a deployment, you may not shoot your gun at all.
What did you think it was going to be like?
I thought it was going to be like Vietnam, dude. I thought it was like, we're going to be laying in machine gun, like just ambush and dropping. But I thought it was going to be like stuff that I did experience later on. But I just expected it right off the gate, you know, right out the gate.
How long were you there for that trip?
I think we jumped in around March, and we were out probably the end of April. I don't think we were there a full 2 months.
What was, so I mean, I guess it really wasn't what you thought it was going to be, but I mean, was it still kind of like, did you still have like exhilarating moments, or were you just kind of?
It was still cool because I got to see how Rangers actually operate in combat. And just seeing all the training come together. that's another thing. We could talk about stuff later on, but like some of the stuff that I've seen, I see why the training is there, because in these instances, like traumatic events, when a lot of gunshots going off, dudes are getting wounded, you see dudes, if you pay attention, they just go on like autopilot, man. Like dudes are just cruising, clearing rooms, doing what they're supposed to do. Like when the stress kicks in, a lot of times I see dudes just go on autopilot. They're doing the right thing, but they're probably not even having to think about it because they're just cruising.
So you finish up that tour, and I think like your next trip, you end up in Mosul, I think sometime around 05.
No, the next one's in Baghdad. And that one was pretty uneventful. We did a bunch of missions. We got in a couple little gunfights, nothing big. That one we were with Delta Force out of the MSS there in Baghdad. So they had them and then a Ranger platoon, and we'd go out with those guys hitting targets and doing simultaneous targets with them. And it was, and we had the SAS there too, the British SAS dudes, which those guys, I never really worked with them a lot, but the ones that we had there, they were not nice guys, and they weren't really that squared away, to be honest with you. And they didn't have equipment. I was blown away. Like as Rangers, we had way better equipment back then than those SAS dudes did.
Wow.
Their funding was a lot less than the U.S. military.
What was it like working with like, tier 1 units and, especially coming from the regular army? What was that experience?
Yeah, it was cool. I'd never seen that stuff before. And the cool thing is that's the thing, Rangers and Delta Force dudes always train. That's one of the things about those two units I can say. They always train. And so we were there. We had the Delta Force guys, like our big brothers there. So these dudes would go to the range with us and teach us shooting and stuff like that. Then we would fast rope out of the little birds. They would have us do VI stuff. They would teach us to do the stuff that they do. When we had downtime, like we didn't have missions, we were doing helo stuff. We were doing live fires. We were doing shooting on the range. We were doing all that kind of stuff, just training to be ready for combat.
Yeah. I mean, you were there, in the Ranger Regiment as you guys pivoted. I mean, you always hear about, the Ranger Regiments really just, kind of glorified infantry, or they were at the time, airfield seizures. And so you actually jumped in, did the airfield seizure, but you were actually in that unit as they transitioned to be a premier direct action unit. I mean,
yeah. And they really always were, but just nobody knew about it. And nobody knew
a good point.
Their capabilities. I mean, think about Vietnam. That's all these dudes did. They were just crushing fools in Vietnam. And like all these other things like Panama, Grenada, they were doing DAC airfield seizures. They were raiding stuff as well. But then combat changed and we went to more of like urban combat. That was new for Rangers because we hadn't done it recently. But it's honestly everything that was done in Afghanistan, even at the JSOC level, 90% of it is a basic Ranger mission. I mean, all the stuff Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 guys are doing, most of the time is a basic Ranger mission. I mean, it's just a DA raid, but the regiment got so much more funding because of JSOC and because Rangers started doing, their own missions and adjacent to those organizations, the funding went through the roof, man. And I didn't realize that, man, until I left the Ranger Regiment. I was like, my gosh, we were spoiled, dude. We had it so much better than the other soft units that I went and worked with.
Wow. So you go to Baghdad. I think you come back. What's your decompression like coming back from, now you've got 2 trips under your belt?
It was just like coming back, hanging out. For me back then, I was single and I was young, so I wanted to go and leave. I wanted to go see my family, my mom, my aunts, uncles. I was always close to my family, aunts, uncles, cousins. I just loved spending time with them and just have some fun time. Maybe go to the beach, party it up a little bit, and then get back at it, man. It's right back into training. So we'd come back, we'd go on leave for 2 weeks, decompress, and then, it's back on the train. And they say, being in the Ranger Regiment, it's like jumping on a train running 1,000 miles per hour. You jump off of it, you're never going to get back on because it's just so fast. So we would stop and pause for just leave, and then that train takes off, and you better be on it because it's going wide open to the next deployment. I mean, just nonstop training. I mean, that's the thing a lot of people don't realize. People talk about Ranger School and all that kind of stuff and how tough it is. Dude, Ranger School is like a vacation for a dude in Ranger Battalion because Ranger Battalion life is so much more brutal than Ranger School, day in and day out. Just way more brutal.
And how old are you? I mean, you're still mid-20s, probably about this time?
Yeah, I was in my early 20s probably. I got to the regiment, I think I was like 22 or 23.
You're still kind of in your peak prime, dude.
Yeah, well, in my baby prime.
Yeah.
I'd say I think we don't really get into our prime until our 30s.
Yeah,
man,
probably.
To be honest with you.
Yeah, especially maturity-wise too.
Even physically. Like your body better when you're into your 30s. like as a young dude, you're just muscling through it, but then you start learning your body and you're more efficient as you get older, and your endurance increases into your 30s and even into your early 40s before it starts dropping off.
That's a good point. Take us to Mosul 2005, dude.
So that trip, you know, a lot of people have heard about that one. That was, we did a bunch of missions up there. We had 2 Ranger platoons at that position. And then we had some Delta Force guys that were like a Recce team that were there that were doing some Recce stuff for us. And then we were raiding targets and stuff. And, it was a good trip. We stayed kind of busy, did a lot of raids, got in a bunch of gunfights. And, you know, then there's that Afar one, which a lot of people have heard about, where the Silver Star and Purple Heart happened. That was a big gunfight. And your thing, I think you said 50 bad guys. I think that's about probably what we killed with direct fire. But once we pulled off, they leveled that whole place with like AC-130s and like like A-10s and stuff like that. So there was probably a lot more than that was killed.
I know you've told that story, but talk to us about what happened in Afar.
So we were going to hit some targets. I think we had 3 targets planned. We hit one, ended up rolling up a dude there, went to hit the second one, and that was this target. And we had linked up with the regular army outside of the city and told them, hey, we're going in. Don't fly any birds in. You stay out of the city. We're going to hit this. We're trying to be silent to get in. So we go in, set up to hit the target. Everything's quiet. And about the time we're getting ready to make breach, silent breach, we're using some tools that we have to breach the house quietly. We had already stopped doing explosive. Back in the day, it was explosive. Everything we blew the door off, or we blew a hole in the wall and went in. But we found out that like caused people to be pissed off. Sometimes we wounded people that didn't need to be wounded on the inside with explosive breaching. So we decided to be sneakier. We used tools to break in. A lot of times we'd catch the dudes sleeping in their house. So it wouldn't even necessarily need to be a gunfight. But anyway, we would go in there, refocus me again. What were we talking about?
The Afar.
Oh yeah. So we go in there and we're getting ready to silent breach, and then a Kiowa helicopter flies over. And then ISR starts telling us, hey, we got dudes waking up on the roof. There's people moving around. And we're like, all right, I just had this eerie feeling that something's about to happen. And then one of my buddy squad leaders was getting ready to breach the door. He breaches it, goes right in, and right as he goes in, or right before he breaches it, a dude opens the door and then shuts it. He says, compromise, boots the door, goes in. Well, the dude had dropped a frag whenever he shut the door. So those dudes, first 2 or 3 dudes, went right in, point blank grenade shrapnel, all up in their legs and everything. And then the next squad that was getting ready to go just paused for a second. And I was looking, I was like, I don't think they could see what happened, but I was across the way. So I just shot across. I'm like, we got to get dudes in this house. So I took my squad, ended up breaking the order and going in front of that next squad because I saw a little bit of hesitation there. Rolled in, and then I go into a room on the left. I see one of our dudes like dragging himself back in the room, like kind of like this, like on his hands, pushing back. And I look at him, he's bleeding and stuff, but he's fine. I'm like, you good, buddy? He's like, yeah, Roger Sergeant, I'm kind of messed up. I'm like, all right, well, do self-aid, fix yourself up, and we'll come back and check on you. Because I could tell he wasn't hurt too bad. Going to the next room, I see one of my squad leader buddies leaning up against the wall, and he's like holding his arm like this. And there's like blood streaming out of his arm and stuff, but I could tell it's not too bad. I'm like, you good? He's like, yeah, I'm good. So then we keep going. And these dudes are just kind of regrouping themselves after they just got blasted. Long story short, we ended up clearing the whole house. One of my dudes got shot in the shoulder and the knee by a machine gun. We killed a machine gun team. Snipers got pinned down on the roof, got engaged by tons of stuff. Long story short, we took so many casualties that we ended up pulling back and rolling out of the house and leveling that whole place. But we killed everything that was in the house, but we had stuff coming after us from like neighboring blocks. So at that point in time, when we had one Ranger platoon, I think we had like 29 guys, 20 something guys on target. And we probably had 150, 200 guys coming at us from around the city. And so once we dealt with that situation, we called Evac. I actually called Evac because the PL and platoon leader were like pinned down. So I called all of our medevac vehicles to pull up. We started loading casualties and got the heck out of there and leveled that place.
Good God, man.
It was pretty bad. Yeah.
Is that where you had to boot the grenade?
Yeah, that happened in there. One of the rooms that I went in ended up clearing a room, and then my platoon leader was like, hey, Mike, let's go in here. And he was, believe it or not, the platoon leader was the number 2 in my stack on this one. So I'm getting ready to roll in to this room, and a grenade just comes rolling to the door. And I see this grenade. It was kind of like, slow motion. Like I see it and I'm looking at it thinking like, what am I going to do? And then I just said, I got to kick this thing. Cause like there's my roommate was on the ground, like 10 feet behind me being treated by the surgeon because he's like got grenade shrapnel everywhere. So I kick that grenade. And as it goes back towards the room, I know it still has line of sight potentially on him. So I just turned and dove the other way towards my buddy, but getting myself out of the way as well. And I caught a bunch of shrapnel on the back of my butt. I mean, nothing big. But yeah, that's where that happened at.
Damn, dude. That sounds like that year in Mosul, or that deployment in Mosul, was pretty kinetic.
It was. And after I left, I got wounded and ended up, the first sergeant was like, hey, do you want to stay here and just sit in the jock and like watch guys go on missions? Because I was wounded. I had to get surgery to fix my arm. My arm was broken from grenade shrapnel. And I was like, man, I don't want to sit here and watch dudes going on missions. Like if I'm staying here, I want to go on missions. And they're like, nah, you're not going on missions. And he's like, do you want to go home then? I'm like, I mean, I guess so. So they sent me home with a lot of the other wounded guys. So I was kind of like the NCOIC escorting a lot of the wounded guys back home, a lot of younger dudes that were wounded. So I went back with them to Germany and then on to the States.
What rank were you then?
E6.
Yeah. You were already in E6 by 05?
Yeah. Yep.
You went in the regiment as an E4?
Yeah.
How did you, I mean, that seems kind of, I don't know if it was quick for back then, but
it's fast. I mean, dude, there's guys that get to Ranger Battalion after graduating RIP, and within 3 years, they're an E6 squad leader. I'm talking like a private shows up.
Were you guys having a high turnover back then because of the war, or?
No, it's just if you're good, they promote you quick. I mean, dudes roll up. I mean, dudes would do squad leader time for like 2 years. After their 2 years of squad leader time, they're moving on to platoon sergeant or something else. So you go up through the ranks fast initially in Ranger Battalion.
Wow. When did the RRC, or the Ranger Regimental Reconnaissance, when did that come on your radar?
Actually, it was when I was in E5 and I was in PLDC, and I bumped into a guy in PLDC who was in RRC, and I was talking to him about it. I'd seen the guys around. It was called RRD back then, but then I started talking to him about it, and I was like, man, this sounds really cool. I'm interested in it. But then I kind of forgot about it. I actually mentioned it to my platoon sergeant because 3rd Ranger Battalion was creating a battalion Recce platoon at the time. That was new. And I was like, I want to go to Recce. My platoon sergeant said, if you go to Recce, I'll disown you. I'll never talk. Like, they hated anything. So that's another thing about the mentality. There was a lot of the line Ranger Battalion dudes hated anything outside of the line Ranger Battalion. They didn't like snipers. They didn't like Recce. They didn't like RRD. So I kind of let it go because I felt like I was going to get blacklisted if I wanted to do even battalion Recce. So I waited for a little bit. Then I got wounded, went to be RIP cadre. And while I was doing RIP cadre, I volunteered for the 2 Omega deployments while I was at RIP. And the second Omega deployment that I did, I was working with RRC guys, RRD at the time. And I was like, this is what you guys do? I'm like, this is like, when I did the Omega stuff, I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever done in my life. This is what I thought doing special ops was all about. And so then I did it again, and I was like, man, this is what the RRD guys do. And then they liked me. So they were like, hey, go to selection, train to selection. And the team sergeant told me, if you make it, we'll bring you to team 3. And I was like, all right, cool. So I started training up, went to selection about, that was in 08. Yeah, I went to selection about a year later and made it. And then after I graduated, they kept their promise. They took me to team 3.
So take me back to RIP when you were a RIP instructor. You got injured and then you end up over at RIP. That's just kind of something I just want to talk about real quick. What are some of the things that you noticed as a RIP instructor early on where you thought, man, this dude's really going to make it, or this dude has what it takes, or that dude's definitely not going to make it? Can you talk to me about some of those disparities?
The biggest thing that we noticed was if a dude had a chip on their shoulder. Like if a guy came in, he wasn't parade rest and very submissive, Roger Sergeant, all this kind of stuff. If they're like, man, like just like, you know, him hawing around or had like some attitude, we knew that was probably going to be a problem. And so a lot of those guys we'd pay close attention to, and they would have problems with other students, but then they would have respect problems with the cadre. And that just doesn't work because in the Ranger Battalion, you have got to trust and follow your NCOIC, like your NCOs, as accurately as possible, because they're trying to set you up for success so that you don't die. discipline is a key part. I mean, and we can talk more about that later, but that's one of the things about Ranger Battalion that I noticed. The discipline that is instilled there carries on forever. And it shows in the way that Rangers perform in other units when they go there as well. So I think that discipline is key. And we would weed that out right off the bat. If we saw a guy that looks like he's going to have issues with discipline or obedience, see you later, bud. You know?
And then what about, I mean, what are some things you noticed early on, I guess, you know, at RIP where you thought, man, I think this guy is going to be good, or, you know, we have high hopes for this dude. What are things that did anybody ever stand out to you, or are you just too busy trying to crush people?
Not a lot of people stood out to me there. But there was, well, I do know this one guy, this one little short black dude, country as heck too. Just the countryest black dude. If you talked to him on the phone, you would probably, like, you wouldn't think they was a normal black guy, you know? He's just country boy. And he comes up, he's like, "Hey, Sergeant," he's like, "Hey, what's a good time for a 12-mile ruck march?" You know? And I'm like, sub 2 hours, you know, ideally. He's like, "That's impossible." And I was like, "No, it's not impossible. We'll show it's possible." And he's like, "All right, I want to see that." But he was asking what the highest standard is. And that's what I like. When guys are asking what the highest standard is, I'm like, I like this guy. Because that's what we want. I don't want somebody who wants to just pass. If you want to just pass, don't join a special operations unit. You want to be the best, right? Even there, you don't want to just pass. So that guy asked me that. And then we ended up showing him, me and my buddy Ben Rye, we ended up with like 65-pound rucks, did it in like an hour and 47 minutes. And that was my fastest time ever timed. But that dude, Ben Rye, he actually beat me. That dude was a beast. He beat me by about a couple minutes. Golly. Impressive.
Yeah, that hurts my bones.
Because an hour and 47 minutes is not a slow pace for a 12
What? How heavy's a ruck?
65 pounds. For that one, the students carry 45 pounds, I believe, but we put in a little extra rate just to be like, not only can we do it with the weight you're carrying, but we can do it with more weight. But we ran almost the entire 12 miles. And if it wasn't for having that dude running with me, you know, it's better when you got a buddy. But we would run, walk. We would walk the uphill, and we would run the flat ground and the downhill. And we averaged, I think, 840 something pace for the whole thing.
That's nuts, dude.
Yeah, but we rocked all the time as cadre. We were in good shape.
RRC selection. You had psych evals, land nav, stress phase. What's one test that almost broke you, and how'd you push past it? How did you push past it?
I think the biggest thing that affected me through that was the board at the end, because you just physically finished this arduous thing, and then now you have to sit in front of this group of your peers here, all the highest ranking dudes in the company, and they grill you. And I think they probably grilled us, I don't know how long it was. It seemed like it was like 4 hours, but it couldn't have been that long because they couldn't get everybody in that day. But they grilled us for probably at least an hour and a half, 2 hours. And when I left that, I knew for a fact in my head that I was not selected. I was like, man, I did all that for nothing. I literally started crying, dude. Like, I shed some tears. I'm like, God, I did all that and I didn't even get selected. And then all of a sudden they put you in this little room on the side. All of a sudden the cadre comes back and they're like, "Hey, we're going to take you over here." And they take you to a cabin, because we do it up in the mountains and cabins, and take me to the cabin. And then they drop me off in the cabin. I walk in, they're like, "Congratulations, you're one of the guys that got selected." I'm like, "What? I got selected?" It was a surprise to me because of the way the board went. They eviscerated me. They tore me apart. They found everything. Those dudes, I swear, they had been looking at me for 2 or 3 years, and they found every flaw in my character and exploited it in that. And it just made me feel like a little ant. I was like, I don't even deserve to be here, but they ended up selecting me. So,
What a lot of people don't understand is tier 1 units like, you know, Delta, SEAL Team 6, RRC, and even the Ranger Regiment as a whole, they run kind of like a pro sports team. You know, you guys have pro strength coaches, pro nutritionists, sports shrinks, massage therapists, massive gyms. When did you first, clock that in the Ranger Regiment wasn't just a fighting force, but you guys were professional athletes? Like,
it was probably about midway through, because they started really putting a lot of that money. A lot of the GWAT funds changed that for all the units. It wasn't just the Ranger Regiment, but they started funding everything a lot more. We had more money for fitness, more money for training, more money for supplements, more money for coaches. And I just started seeing it getting better and better and better. And then when you try to persevere through a career in those units, you have to be an athlete, dude. You're competing against the dudes around you all day, every day, whether you realize it or not, but you are. And if you start falling below, somebody's going to step up and take your place. So you have to be good at training and staying fit. It really, I guess, clicked to me when I left the Ranger Regiment and went out to like the SF world and places like that. And I was surprised that the funding that we had, even in the Ranger Battalion, the tier 2, Ranger battalions, we had more funding by far than what I saw with the SF guys and the SEALs and stuff that I trained with. And I was blown away. And I was like, man, we really had it good because the funding was good. The equipment was good. We had the best equipment. We got equipment before anybody else, except for like SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force, RRC would get it a lot, sometimes equipment, faster than them when it was free fall stuff, because we were kind of the subject matter experts of like free fall. We got some of the free fall stuff sooner than them, but for the most part, it was just, Ranger Battalion would get that top equipment just right behind those tier 1 guys. And a lot of the other units didn't get it for like 5, 6, 7 years later, so we had it really good, man. I didn't realize it so it's like when you're in something, you don't realize, you think the grass is greener on the other side until you go and you're like, wait a minute, it was much better back over there. And that's kind of the way it was at the end of my career. When I left Ranger Regiment, I looked back and I was like, man, we had it really good. I didn't realize how good we had it.
Yeah. Good point. The big Army's got nothing on you, SOC. Those strength and conditioning programs, prepped you for 40-mile, RRC marches. What's one workout or coach that turned you into a beast for that grind, dude?
I never had anybody coach me. Like I said, that's the thing. You got to learn how to coach yourself in those situations. And we have coaches in the regiment, but it was kind of new. I never really used that. I wish I had of. But for me, I think it was just training. Like I started doing a lot of functional fitness. I did a lot of cardio. I mean, part of the OTC pipeline, they made us do a lot of cardio. Like we were talking about, I hated cardio when I was a squad leader in Ranger Battalion. I just did it because I had to. And then I get to RRC and they're like, hey, not only does your cardio have to be good, it needs to be a lot better. And you got to cover lots of miles. So they gave us these running programs that increased our endurance, and that really helped me a lot. Because if you have endurance, man, it's all about making sure you're hydrated and making sure you're fueled properly, and then your body can perform, if you have that endurance capability.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Nutrition is key, though. You have to stay hydrated. You have to have nutrients because you're burning significant amounts of calories, especially if you're carrying 100, 115, 120 pound rucksack in the mountains, with night vision on, up steep stuff. You're burning immense calories.
Is that something you guys talked about in the regiment, like nutrition, what to eat, how to eat?
Yeah, dude. We're especially in RRC, because if you're not eating properly, if you're not fueling your body properly, you're not going to be able to achieve the missions. I mean, you can't walk 40 miles with a rucksack on and not eat anything. You got to eat stuff and lots of water along the way, or your body's just going to crush. It's going to start cramping up. You're going to seize up and you're going to fall behind. You're going to make everybody weak. So being optimally hydrated and with nutrition going on those things was key, man.
Let's go back right before you get to the RRC. You did 2 Omega trips. Can you kind of explain to the listeners kind of what the Omega trips were without, diving into stuff that we can't?
Yeah. So the Omega program was just where Rangers and, SEAL Team 6 guys, Delta Force guys would augment like the CIA. The CIA had their like Indige. They have their troops that they train up, their local national troops. They have their own contractors that are former Rangers, Delta Force guys, SEAL Team 6 guys, or whatever, that run those troops. But they had us assigned to those elements as a JSOC counterpart. So basically what we were is a force multiplier. So the agency could go out and do missions and bring to bear JSOC assets because they had a JSOC dude on the ground. Not only that, they could bring back JSOC custodial care. So like, for example, if we took a detainee, JSOC could take custody of the detainee versus them having to push it to another place where they're just going to get released. Because
what were the Omega teams doing different than what JSOC was doing?
Nothing really. For the most part, I mean, they probably, it's all basically the same thing. It's just in a different format, right? So the Omega program, if you really think out, it's a lot like Special Forces. It's just like, it's a Green Beret type deal, honestly. It's, you're training the Indige and working with them. I mean, that's really what it was. It was a partner force that we worked with.
How did you end up on your first Omega tour? Because that seems like it's pretty, tip of the spear even in special operations.
Well, I was a RIP cadre, and first sergeant just came to me, and he was like, "Hey, dude, you want to go on this deployment and do this Omega deployment?" I was like, "I don't know what that is, but sounds good to me." I was a deployment, for lack of a better term, a slave to deployments, as the Bible would call it, a harlot. I was a deployment harlot. So
we won't say the real world here for the real world word for the listeners.
yeah, just keep it clean. So I was a deployment harlot. So I loved going overseas and deploying. I always wanted to be there because I figured the more I'm over there, the more chances I get to kill bad guys. And that's just what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a killing machine. I wanted to hunt enemies in my country. And so he asked me if I wanted to go to that. And I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll check it out. He's like, okay, go buy you some civilian clothes. We're going to give you an allowance to buy civilian clothes. You're on relaxed grooming standards. You can grow your hair and beard now. I'm like, oh, sweet. That's cool. And
especially in the regiment, man, where everything is so like, dress right, dress high and tights.
Yeah. And it is for the most part. I mean, there's a lot of dudes in the regiment that have relaxed grooming standards, not just RRC, but like people don't know about that stuff because it's so secretive. But but yeah, for the most part, most line battalion Rangers guys, clean cut. You've got an army-ish kind of haircut, and I'm like, cool. I did that. And so I went over and I flew overseas. I had no really point of contact to link up with. I just flew over there, linked up. I knew what outstation I was going to and that I had to get there. So I get over there. I'm like, hey, I got to go to Kandahar. I'm supposed to go to this base near Kandahar. And so I eventually got a flight out there. And I fly out there. I don't know who I'm linking up with. I just land on the airfield and some dudes show up to pick me up. And they're like, hey, who are you? I'm like, hey, my name's Mike. I'm the Ranger. I'm here for this Omega thing. And it was a bunch of SEAL Team 6 dudes from Red Squadron. And they were super cool dudes, man. I like one of the guys I worked with on that trip, his name's Rodney Brown, still a good friend to this day. But all these SEAL Team 6 dudes took me right in. They were the greatest dudes. That was the most professional group of SEAL Team 6 dudes I ever worked with, to be honest with you. They were great. It actually made me want to go there because they actually sent out one of their commanders and they're like, hey, we got this new program called Red to Blue. And it was where you could go from a Ranger and go straight and assess for SEAL Team 6 without having to be a SEAL. And I was like, that's interesting. And they were trying to do that because they were bringing dudes from the SEAL teams to SEAL Team 6, but they had to train them up so much for them to be able to operate with JSOC. They were like, if we just pull a Ranger, we put him through our selection course, he can already operate with JSOC because he already does. So I was considering doing that for a little bit, but then ended up going to RRC. And I'm kind of glad I did because those guys are good. There's some good guys there, but I ran into some I should say training lacking in training, lacking in physical fitness elements of that unit too. So
yeah, I think we were talking, I don't know, last night about them quitting on a target on more than one occasion.
Yeah, there have been times where we've walking up some steep stuff, and I'm not gonna lie, it sucked. But I mean, I'm not gonna quit though. You know what I mean? These dudes are like, screw this, we're out, and they roll out. Like, what the heck, man? And a big one. So I don't want to say a lot of names in this one, but one of my Ranger buddies in RRC, we were in Somalia. I was with a team down in southern Somalia, and then one of my guys was the assistant team leader of the team in northern Somalia. And they went to go on a mission. We were all going to go on the mission, but it ended up because of the political sensitivity of where we were. Nobody knew that we had soldiers there. So we had to be very careful. If one of us got shot and it made the news, it was going to be a big deal. So we had to cut back the Americans that we were taking. So only the team up north went. And my buddy, who went on that mission, he's a stud, man. I mean, a beast. And he's like, we're walking up this mountain. We got SEAL Team 6 dudes. We got one Delta Force dude was the team leader, a couple of SEAL Team 6 guys, a couple of guys from Orange, and then him as the RRC guy. They're walking up the mountain with full kit on the Indige. They're walking up the mountain. He looks back, and there's Indige carrying extra rifles and body armor. And he's like, the heck are these dudes? He looks and like, the SEAL Team 6 dudes are gone. And I'm like, what the heck? He told me, he said they straight up gave their body armor and weapons to the Indige and walked back down the mountain to the trucks. And I was like, yeah, but it wasn't just them. The dudes from Orange did the same thing. It was only the RRC guy and the CAG dude that it made it up there, maybe a couple other dudes. But half of the dudes bailed out. And my buddy said, and this dude's a beast now. He's like, I ain't gonna lie, it sucked. But I mean, I'm not gonna give my weapon up to the Indige. So
that's an interesting story, dude.
That's happened a lot of times too.
Well, that's kind of a bummer to hear. That first Omega trip, man, dude, what was that like? I know that was a kinetic trip for you. And I know you've talked about it on other podcasts, but just for our listeners, you know, you kind of explain the program, you know, you're there. You know, what can you tell us, you know, about what you guys were doing and what was that like?
It was good. It started off really slow. We did a lot of training with the Indig and stuff like that. And it started slow. We went on some missions, all dry holes and stuff. And then eventually it ended up, I had the most experience. So that's another thing. The SEAL Team 6 team leader asked me, he's like, how many deployments you have? And at the time, I think I had 8 deployments. And he was like, you have more deployments than anybody here except for me. And I think he had 8 deployments too. So we were both had the most amount of deployments.
And this is before you went to RRC.
Yeah, this is before I went to RRC. And he goes, I'm going to make you my assistant team leader. And I was like, all right, cool. So I ended up being the assistant team leader, which we didn't really need most of the time. It was just him like running everything, but we all planned everything together. But then it got to the point where the Rangers were coming down from RC South or TF South or whatever they were at. Rangers were coming in and staging at our compound to launch and smack dudes down south. And they were killing dudes like you can't imagine. So the SEAL Team 6 dudes were like, we want to go out with them. So then the Rangers would come in and they'd go along just to help out. But we were there for the agency. So we had to leave somebody back in case the agency had a mission. So they would go out and have fun. And I got left behind, me and a couple other dudes to go out with the agency. And sometimes it was kind of boring because we sat back and did nothing. But then there was times where we would go out as well. So they would go out with the Rangers and we would go out with the agency. And a lot of the stuff we did was more low vis stuff, clandestine stuff, Recce stuff. But then we would also do raids as well. And so when we would do that, then I would be the ground force commander for the Omega guys, while the ST6 team leader was running the stuff with the assault force. And so it gave me the opportunity to kind of be the team leader for the ground force. And then the very next deployment I did Omega again, it was no big deal. I was used to being the ground force commander and I'd already kind of done that stuff a little bit anyway. But yeah, I just honed my skills and I got to work with a lot of good dudes. I mean, every single dude that was there, nothing bad to say about them. Good dudes.
Were both those Omega trips pretty kinetic?
Yeah, both of them were. The first one was the most kinetic. The second one, we were in Oregon E, and a lot of the targets we went to just didn't fight. And actually, I ended up telling my intel guy, I said, I'm sick of driving across these IED-laden roads to go after dudes who may or may not fight. So we ended up, I said, hey, I want you to start finding dudes that you think are going to fight so that we can go out. And if we're going to go through all these IED-related roads, we might as well be killing somebody. And so it was a little bit slower, but the same thing happened there. They sent a Ranger platoon down, a Ranger platoon staged out of OE, and they were smacking targets. So, and the agency kind of got stood down for a little bit. So I just started rolling out with Rangers.
I know the Team House podcast covered kind of a lot of those stories, and I hope some of the listeners will go back and listen to those podcasts because you really dive into some of those, and I think they're great. And I don't want to step on some of the stories you've already told, but there was a good one that I heard you tell, and it's the Kandahar checkpoint story where you got a pistol under your scarf, and you're talking, your way out of that checkpoint. Walk us through that.
Yeah. So that was not even a tactical mission, dude. We went from our little secret base that we were at to the main military base in Kandahar. We drove through just to get some stuff, hit the PX, get some stuff from the PX, meet with the commander, just update, you know what I mean? And then roll back. That's all it was. We roll there. Well, we get left a little bit late, so it got dark on us going back. Well, you're not supposed to be out. There was a curfew, so you're not supposed to be out. So we roll up. And we roll up on a Taliban checkpoint at a bridge. And this bridge is probably 100 yards long. It's a pretty big bridge. So we pull up. The first vehicle is in front. I believe my buddy Rodney was in that front vehicle. He eases on through, keeps going. Rodney was a source handler for them. So he was always out low vis. He was going through checkpoints all the time, super smooth at it. So he rolled out. And then I was the next one. I roll up, talk to the guys, roll out. I'm about halfway across the bridge. The third vehicle gets stopped. We're like, crap. So they're like, hey guys, we got stopped. We need to come back because we need to be together. You know what I mean? So I start backing up across the bridge. The other one starts backing across the bridge. We get close. They got a PKM on top of the roof aimed down at us. Probably 30 dudes around there walking around with AKs and PKMs, RPKs, RPGs, just dudes milling around, whatever. there's a dude in front of me with an AK, and you can tell he's a newer guy. He's just like amped. He's like antsy, just like got his rifle just ready to rock. And you see he's just like kind of shaking back and forth like, hey, you going to tell me to kill these people or what? And then there was a more senior guy that kept leaning into my window. He didn't have a gun. I think he had a gun, but I slung behind his back, so it wasn't really a threat. And he's leaning in the window, smoking a cigarette. And mind you, in our vehicles, we black out all the lights, the dash lights and stuff like that. So it's pretty dark in there so that we can throw nods and not be blinded out driving if needed. So it's kind of dark in there, and he keeps trying to reach in to turn the car off, and I keep pushing his hand back. I'm like, no, I'm not turning the car off. He's like, get out of the car. I'm like, not getting out of the car. That's our TTP. If we were to get out of the car, it's not a good thing. We're going to have to probably shoot our way out of here. So like, it just puts us in a position that we don't need to be.
Does this guy speak English?
He does. Yeah. A little bit of English, broken English, but it was pretty decent. And he's like, are you Taliban? I'm Taliban. He's like, are you Taliban? I'm like, no, I'm not Taliban. Are you Taliban? He's like, yes, I Taliban. I'm like, oh, okay. So we're talking. The team leader, this guy, Jeff, is all I'll say, is behind us, and he's talking to his terps and all stuff like that, trying to talk us out of it. And then we're just waiting. It gets to the point where like we're in a countdown to like we're thinking we're gonna have to shoot our way out of here because it's getting kind of sketchy. Dudes are starting to amp up. I got a dude right here, literally. His head's from me to you, or from here to my hand. I got my pistol, like I said, I pulled it out, eased up under my scarf. It's pointing at this dude's face from this close. The dude in the passenger seat is ready to smoke this dude over here. And the dude that I have in the back seat, I have 2 SEALs with me in the back seat. He's just looking out and extra firepower if needed. And so we're on the countdown. We're counting down from like a minute down to about 30 seconds. And all of a sudden, like, hey, we're good, roll. And so we rolled out because our terps used the radio. And they're like, you see this radio right here? We're talking to the night plane. You might kill us, but the night plane is going to kill you. And I guess it scared them enough.
So they already knew what time it was, man.
Yeah, they knew. I mean, we could have done that, but we were just trying to ease through without ruffling a lot of feathers. But ultimately, we got out by threatening them that we were going to call CAS on them, basically.
What's another time that you can remember, you're out on mission, out on target, and you're thinking, this is it, man?
Well, that one that I talked about in the beginning a little bit about that we were going up to basically recce the target, get eyes on the target before the assault force and all those dudes came up. Yeah, I thought for sure, like I said, I was like, well, maybe they'll give me a Medal of Honor for this one because I'm probably going to die and I'm going to be doing my best. But it just didn't turn out to be a gunfight.
18 deployments, dude. That's a lot. There's no way we're going through all those. But any mission that haunts you, not for danger, but for what you saw or had to do?
Not really. I was lucky enough not to be on any missions like that. Like I know there was Rangers that had to go dig up dead bodies that were buried in Iraq. The Rangers that had to go recover, that rescued Marcus Luttrell and all those guys and recovered those bodies. Dude, it was horrendous. Some of my buddies were on that. I mean, can you imagine bodies that have been laying in the desert heat for 2 weeks, by the time they're found? I mean, it's just, I couldn't imagine that, dude. I never had to do anything like that. And I imagine that would haunt me if I had to.
Yeah, absolutely. I like this one because it's kind of lighthearted, dude. But what's one of your funniest combat moments? Something absurd or human that cut through kind of some of the tension?
I've got 2 of them, and they're both the same thing that happened. So in Iraq, we did this raid, hit the target, ended up clearing everything out. We're getting ready to exfil, right? So the helicopters are coming in. It gets really loud. Helicopters are coming in. They land. Well, it spooked a cow. And this cow runs and breaks its tether because they tether him to the ground with like a stake, breaks his tether, and he's just running along with the stake, dragging along on the rope. One of my team leaders, big dude, this dude's like, he was probably 250 pounds, 6'4" at the time, big dude, was like a college football player. He's going out. All of a sudden, this cow goes by. The rope wraps around his leg, girth hitches him, takes him onto his back, and he's being drugged along. He's like, help. I'm like, oh my God, I try to get over there, and we cut the rope, or he got free. I can't remember how. So then that was in 2004, 2005. Fast forward to 2007. I'm with Red Squadron at the Omega. These dudes that I really liked, and I trained with them, and they liked me. I did CQB with these guys, and because they didn't know who I was. They never really worked with me. So we worked great together as a team. I remember we go through to clear this one house, and we're clearing around. It was a big open compound, couple buildings on the corner, but like a wall, like an Afghan compound. And there's animals and chickens and daggum goats and cows running around. There's this cow going, running around in a circle to his tether, right? And I'm clearing across, but you got night vision on, so you're kind of looking through a straw at the time. So I'm going along. All of a sudden, I feel something against my leg, and I didn't think anything of it. And then I stop for a second. I'm looking at something, and I feel whatever rubbed against this side of my leg is now on this side of my leg. And I go to try to step, and I can't. My legs are hogtied. That cow went around me, and it bound my legs together, and I literally just fell straight on my side. But luckily, I had a knife on my chest. Pulled it out, cut that thing, and I was free. But can you imagine? So embarrassing. Here you are, a line Ranger Battalion dude, first time on a deployment, working with the CIA dudes, working with SEAL Team 6. You're trying to do the good, and you get girth hitched by a dang cow. I mean, it could have happened to anybody, but it's embarrassing.
Did you stand up and look around and see if any of the dudes had seen you?
Yeah, I can't remember if anybody did or not, but I definitely told them about it afterwards. It was so funny though.
Did you catch heat?
No, they didn't mess with me, but it was funny.
18 deployments, dude. Omega included. What's one memory? Sight, sound, smells that kind of still cuts deep.
Well, one mission, I guess, because it was more recent, I guess, but it was when I was at the Omega, when I was down at Omega 50 down there. We did a hit on a fighter camp through like source intelligence or human source intelligence, and a lot of times it ended up being a dry hole, but this one ended up being live, and we killed about 80 dudes, and I think 70, 80 dudes in a matter of no time, like an hour, 45 minutes or so.
Can you walk me through that night, what that mission was like, and kind of how that all played out?
I almost didn't go on that mission because I had gotten food poisoning probably a couple days before, and we hadn't had any missions like. People think you don't go on a mission every single night always. Some deployments I did go on a mission every single night, multiple missions a night. But in Afghanistan, especially the Omega stuff, it wasn't always every night. So you may have 3 or 4 days before you go on a mission. So you're just working out, training, whatever. And I had food poisoning, so I was struggling, blowing it out the bottom and the top the whole time. I assume it was food poisoning. I just didn't feel good, and I'm struggling staying hydrated. So this mission came up. Mind you, we'd been there for like 2 months already. 2 or 3 months, and had not fired a shot on any of the Omega missions. So this one came up, and I was like, man, I told the team leader, that dude Jeff, I was like, hey man, if you don't need me on this one, I'd probably be better off to stay home. I'm just not feeling good. I've never done that. Like I said, I was a deployment harlot. I want to go on every single mission, but this one I felt that bad that I was willing to not go. And he was like, nah, brother, I really need you on this one. He's like, I really do need you. And I'm like, all right, I'll be there. If you need me, I'll be there. So, what?
I'm trying to imagine what it's like you're puking and sick, and now you're about to go do the Lord's work. And
we drove a ways there, and I'm a driver. Like, I like driving too, because, I just like, I'm a good driver. I like being in control of the vehicle. I don't like when other people are driving. So I was one of our vehicle drivers. So I'm driving along. And man, there's times where I'm like opening up the door, flipping my nods up, heaving out the door, driving down the road on a JNTV, an armored Toyota Hilux, shutting the door, nods back down, keep on going, man. It was horrible. We got there, we started walking in, and I was not feeling good. So one of the SEAL Team 6 dudes gave me a set of chicken plates. They were like just little thin steel low-vis plates, so I didn't have as much. And I threw in a rack with stuff. I was walking in. I was like, all right, I'm good. I could have gone with my regular stuff, but they were making it a little easier for me. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I'll roll in. We walked probably 10 kilometers in super flat ground. So it wasn't steep or anything, just kind of through woods and stuff, or like fields and stuff, and around like bushes and near creeks. Well, then we show up at the place, and we see some dudes coming out, big long beards, big turbans, look like legit, like high level mullahs, And so we're like, and they had suitcases, like briefcases. And we're like, and this is in the middle of the night. And we're like, what in the world is going on here? Same thing with the thing in Afar. Something inside of me just said, I think something's about to happen. Like, there's those 2, maybe 3 missions in my whole career, the worst ones. It was like right before it kicked off, I just had this inkling. I don't know if that was God or what, that like, there's something different about this one. And so I don't know what it was. So we walk up, we start sending the indige out. We have Kansoff, which is JTF2, the Tier 1 unit from Canada, working with us. We also had one of their tier 2 units, I think, working with us. We had Omega, so the agency, and then we had all of our people and the Indige. So we probably had 150 people going in on this target. It was a huge conglomeration of people going on this target. But most of them, you have to just put them, they're like chess pieces. You put them there and that's just what they do until you put them somewhere else. Cause they're just,
How big was this facility or area you're hitting?
It was a few compounds together within a little, probably 10, 15, 20 acre area that was rumored to have 80 Taliban fighters, or Al Qaeda fighters or whoever it was. And so we go up there, we're setting the Indige in, all this kind of stuff. And then two Canadian snipers were like, hey, we're going to ease up a little further up ahead. And I was like, hey, I'm going to go with you guys and get eyes on the target. Wait on me. So then I told Jeff, the team leader, I was like, hey, I'm going to go get eyes on the target. It's like, once I said, I noticed something was different about that mission, sickness was gone. Like, I felt perfectly fine. It's like switched on killing machine now. And I'm like, I'm going up there to get eyes on the target. So I start walking up. There's a river that runs here, and you know how they have like a levee next to the rivers a lot of times. So it was a levee right next to the river that had trees and bushes and all kinds of stuff growing on it. And then the levee comes across and it had a little trail on it. And then at the left side of the levee is a mud wall that drops down off of the levee into the compound. So on the top of the levee is a wall. Inside of the levee, dropping down about 10 feet, is a compound. So we're kind of elevated above it on this levee walking. And there's tree limbs hanging down, so you can see through the trail, but you can't see too far because there's stuff hanging down. You know how it is with your laser. You shine your laser, it just blinds off of the vegetation, so you can't see. So we're easing up, and these two Canadian guys kind of slipped up ahead of me. And all of a sudden, I hear them start yelling in Pashto. And I don't speak Pashto. They did. And they were yelling in Pashto. And I understood a little bit of it because of the Afghans, but they were basically telling this dude, put his hands down, put his weapon down. And I couldn't even see the dude because there was a limb hanging out. So I sweep this limb out of the way, and I can see there's a dude with an AK ready to rock with a chest rack on. But these dudes are trying to get him to put his gun down. Their ROE was different than ours. They weren't allowed to shoot unless shot at. So luckily they were both off to the side. So I came right up the middle and smoked that dude, like right up in between the two of them, smoked that dude. I had an MP7 at the time, which is a little submachine gun. It was brand new at the time. SEAL Team 6, I believe, was the first to field it, and they had just gotten at that deployment. Like, we took it out of the pack and grease, zeroed it in, and used it. So I think they told me I was the first dude to ever kill anybody with an MP7, so that's kind of cool. So I smoked that dude. Meanwhile, mind you, there's only 3 of us. Everybody else is like a couple hundred meters back, like setting the Indige and talking stuff up.
Are you running suppressed?
Yeah.
So they probably couldn't hear the shots, I would imagine.
They could, because it's a supersonic round. So it's like it's a 4.6 millimeter, super hot, but suppressed. So they're here, hearing the supersonic crack. Shoot that dude. Well, as I'm shooting him, that bullet doesn't have a lot of knockdown power. So it's like going through his chest. But as he goes down, he pulls the trigger on his AK. So he fires a couple rounds off, pop, 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 into the ground. Dust kicks up. Rounds come ricocheting past us, but he was dead then. I just kept drilling him all the way until he hit the ground. He hits the ground, piles up. I look over to the left, and there's the fighter camp. It's like weapons are stacked. Remember, like in boot camp, you stack your weapons like boot camp in the little triangles? Weapons are stacked boot camp wise. There's dudes all sleeping in this courtyard. I see dudes moving. There's a dude crawling towards the weapons. I busted him in the back of the head. Meanwhile, all the SEAL Team 6 dudes and all the agency dudes come running, dude. They're like coming running to the sound of the gunfire. So we're up there. It's just me. The Canadian snipers, I have no clue where those dudes went. Never saw them again in my life. They jumped off into the ditch on the side, I guess. I don't know. Never saw them. I mean, they may have been doing good things. I just didn't see them. It just wasn't my focus. So then I'm drilling these dudes in here inside the compound, and the SEALs are up. Dudes are throwing frags. A dude comes up out of the compound, and he's like firing with like a PKM, like machine gun, and firing. And this is actually right before everybody gets there. He's firing up at that, and the rounds are hitting this mud wall that's about 4 feet high in front of me, and so close to me that it's throwing dirt into my eyes. Like, it was going under my eye pro, and I was like struggling to see because dirt was getting in my eyes. And I just kind of, in my mind, I was like, I've got to dial this in, and I have to make a good shot or I might get shot. So I just dialed it in, bam, smoked that dude in the head with that MP7. He was only like 10, 15 yards away, maybe 20 yards away, but he couldn't see me because it's dark, but I can see him. So he's just spraying where he thinks I'm at. And I dialed in, smoked him in the head. He falls back, busts a kerosene lantern, which catches the whole house on fire. And the house is filled with Chinese C4, and that catches on fire. And then we're inside this compound with C4 burning on fire, dropping AC-130 rounds within 50 meters of this to suppress dudes that are coming, because they're talking about, like, there's 12 dudes coming at you from here. We got a squad assaulting on you guys. I mean, dudes were coming at us from all over. We had way more people than them, but they were amongst our ranks. They had gotten through in certain spots. So there's all this stuff going on. We're dropping casts, doing strafing runs with the A-10s. Me and the team leader end up moving out to go to another gunfight that we hear on the side. And we take a knee on this one trail. And I remember, like, he was probably as far as from here to this little thing over here from me, just probably 3 feet to my left. I'm taking a knee. He's taking a knee. Machine gun burst goes off. And I could feel it snap, 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 like by my left shoulder. I could feel the snap of it on my shoulder, like the concussion of the rounds coming by. I'm like, God, dog, that has to be close. And then I talked to him afterwards. He felt it on his right arm too. So that means that burst of machine gun went within a 3 to 4 foot space between the two of us and didn't hit either one of us. I was like, holy crap. Then we ended up getting down. We maneuvered up a little bit more, ended up throwing some grenades at some dudes, doing like a near ambush, and then pulling back out of there. But in the initial engagement, we engaged, pulled back, hit it with AC-130 and stuff, went back in, did all that clearing and stuff. We were there about 45 minutes to an hour, and I think we killed all the bad guys that were there. So if it was 80, we killed 80, you know.
What is that like after, a mission like that? Like, how do you decompress? I mean, obviously you get back in your vehicles and, or did you guys hump it out, or did you?
Yeah, we walked back out to the vehicles. From what I remember. Yeah, I think we walked back out, or we may have had the Indage bring the vehicles up closer. We didn't walk as far out on the way out. But dude, those missions like that, to me, when everything goes as planned, we didn't have even the slightest casualty. Like, nobody even got wounded on our side, and we killed all of the bad guys. And I was like, man, that's the way it's supposed to be. It gives you confidence in your training. You're like, dude, the training that we did works. Like, we beat the bad guys. We were in a massive gunfight with these dudes. We didn't even take a single casualty and killed them all. So it gives you confidence.
Do you go back to the compound kind of feeling like you won the Super Bowl type feeling?
Yeah. It's kind of like that. Yeah. You're just amped up. Oh, dude, we go back, start crushing beers and partying all night long. It's like, yep, celebrate. Yeah. Have a fire by the fire pit. I got tons of pictures of that. Us drinking beers and having fire by the fire pit. Good old time. Yeah,
dude, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that story. I don't ask tons of like war stories, but you have such a deep depth of, experience. It's just cool to hear one of those two stories. Any Omega op where luck, not skill, pulled you through? Something so dumb you still laugh?
Nothing really that I can think of. Not off the top of my head.
If you had one Omega story you could declassify for us, nothing too hot, what would it be and why?
I mean, nothing. There's, a lot of people think, oh, this Omega thing, because it's the CIA or whatever, is so spooky and secretive. It is secretive, but the reason it's secretive, I don't really understand it. It's nothing different, really, much more than what we did in the Ranger Battalion, or that, other guys in the JSOC realm did. It's just DA raids. They were just using Indage to do it. They just had different funding sources. I mean, it wasn't anything that crazy. And then when I went to RRC, the stuff that we did was all the same stuff those dudes did, and probably even more so. At times, it just depends. It's just, I don't know. I don't think there was anything that big. It wasn't like for me, like, nobody should think I'm super crazy special because I worked on those missions. It was just an assignment that I was assigned to, and I did it. And anybody could do it. It was just standard stuff, just killing bad guys, man.
So those two trips, you did the Omega trips. You went to the RRC after that.
I did.
And we kind of talked about kind of how that came on your radar. What was that, assessing, and then, the selection course, up to what you can talk about?
Well, yeah, you put in the packet, and then they accept you for selection. You show up, you get in a bus, they drive you up there. You do all the admin stuff up front, PT test, 5 mile run, 12-mile standard ruck march, all this kind of stuff, but it's in the mountains now. You're at elevation, doing it on hills and stuff. Psychological evaluations like crazy. Like, we'd spend all day in the room with a psych, taking psych tests, aptitude tests, all that kind of stuff, screening us mentally. And then it goes into the stress phase, which is Basically land navigation, advanced land navigation. I think that's what, Delta Force calls theirs, but it's advanced land navigation. You're just doing long distance navigating with a decent amount of weight in a ruck in mountainous terrain. And it's an individual event. Like you're by yourself for, 18 hours, 16 hours a day walking in the woods. And it's up to you whether you pass or fail. It's up to you whether you make time. It's up to you whether you're accurate navigating. And like one mishap, right? Like on the ridge in a mountain, you could look on your map and be like, hey, there's a spur going here and there's a spur going here. I'm like, I think I need this spur, because you're looking at it and you're like with your compass and you're like, I think I need this spur. But if you're wrong, you could end up a couple miles further from your place than you need to be. So it can really mess you up and eat up the time. So you're doing that. And then at the end of it, the last day is a longer distance. It's called the unknown distance march. On the last day, you walk doing your land nav all during that day. I think for us it was about 12 miles or so. And then that night we did like another 28 miles. So it was split up by a little bit, but a total of about 40 miles that day. And it was brutal. And then at the end of that, we did the board that I talked to you about, where I literally was crying afterwards because I thought I physically passed this hard thing, but now I'm not even going to get picked up. But thank God that they did. And it was great, man. It was a great experience. Once I got selected, they honored it. Just like they said, I went to team 3. I worked with those same guys that I bumped into on Omega, except the team sergeant was actually going on. He actually moved on to be a first sergeant at headquarters company. And then a new guy took over as the team sergeant. And so worked with those guys and I loved it, man. Those guys were like brothers to me. I was just hanging out with one of them's son this past week at the Ranger Regiment, one of my guys from my old team. So it's cool.
So once you get selected, how long is the training? What's that training pipeline?
So I think the pipeline is like roughly about 10 or 11 months long. Now I can't remember exactly. I think it was a little bit shorter when I went through. I think they added some stuff to it. But yeah, I mean, it was everything from like you're taking a dude that's already been a Ranger doing DA stuff, or already an SF dude doing that stuff, or maybe, in the regular Army doing whatever, that's coming to this selection and trying out. And then you've got to take them to that next level. So we do reconnaissance courses, we do camera courses on learn how to do photography, editing photography, video. Because we're a small team that's going to be out in the middle of nowhere, completely defending ourselves. All of us need to know how to call for fire. So we all go to like a lot of JTAC training, dropping bombs, calling for fire. We all need to be medics too. Like our team, like everybody in the Ranger Regiment's a medic, right? Kinda. Like their Ranger first responder is like better training than medics used to get in the Army. Nowadays, I think they get better stuff, but everybody's got to be a medic, because what if the team medic gets smoked? Like we got to take care of him, So we did all those trainings. We did the tactical recce stuff, actually incorporating the free fall and jumping in, doing the long range hardcore movement into the target, then doing the reconnaissance, coming out and then doing the whole mission brief and stuff. So they just slowly work you up. And then at the end, the last phase of it, there's stuff that I won't talk about on here that we do and train for more of the clandestine AFO type stuff. But it's good stuff. And then there's phase boards along the way. So at selection, like when I went through selection, I think we had probably 25 to 28 guys or so, maybe, when we went to selection, and my memory's kind of rough. We had, I think, 8 dudes physically finish the selection when we like physically made it to the end. And out of the 8 that made it, only 4 got selected. So then the selection from the fall, because they do spring and fall selections, from the fall selection, they partnered those dudes up with us, and we had a total of 9 going in our OTC pipeline. And that's the operator training course. I think they call it RTC now because they wanted to be different, and it's reconnaissance training course instead of operator training course. But yeah,
because OTC for SOFD is like 6 months.
Yeah,
so
it is.
I mean, you guys are doing like a whole nother 4 or 5 months. And I mean, you guys really are a tier 1 unit. I think a lot of people don't know that. I didn't know that until you and I sat down and talked for a while. I wasn't totally aware of RRC. I'd heard about it. And, we had another guest on the podcast who talked a little bit about it, and you guys really are the super secret, deep reconnaissance, which is pretty unique. After you graduate OTC, RTC, where do you end up? Like, what do you end up doing from there? Or what can you tell us about some of your trips that you did doing that?
Yeah. So once I graduated, I go to my team. So that's a whole new thing. You're walking to the new team that you've never worked with. You've just been in training all this time. And dude, they welcomed me right in like brothers, man. Like it was not intimidating at all. Like I was intimidated when I got there, but as soon as I walked in the door, man, the team sergeant that I had at the time, good dude named Will, and all the dudes, they welcomed me right in, man, and it was great. But then the learning starts because you went through all this stuff to test you and to get you to a certain point, but there's a lot more to it than that. And so it's just learning from a fire hose. You're still going to course after course after course after course after course as a team now, driving courses, surveillance detection courses, computer, stuff, hacking, for lack of a better term, not really hacking, but computer type skill stuff, camera stuff, clandestine. I mean, you name the stuff. We're constantly doing free fall stuff. We do a free fall trip typically we come back from a deployment, do a free fall trip to freshen up our currency since we haven't jumped in 4 months being deployed. And then we jump all through our training cycle doing regular jumps. And at the end of it, we do another 2-week jump trip. So each one of these 2-week jump trips, we're probably cranking out 60, 70, 100 jumps. So
you guys doing full locker jumps?
50 to 60 jumps. Yeah, a lot of them. 50 to 60 jumps, actually, because I think we jumped typically about 100 jumps a year. 100 or so jumps a year on average in RRC, unless you did additional things.
What elevation you guys jumping from?
Anywhere up to like 25,000 feet, 35. You can do halos from 35,000 feet. There's a few of those that have been done over the years. I've done a couple of those later on, but most of the time it's 25,000 and down, just because there's so much more logistical requirements needed to go to 35 grand. So 25 grand is typically it. But in the free fall world, 90% of training jumps are done at like 12.5, right? 12.5, 12.5, 12.5. And then when you really want to stress it, you take it on up to 18, 20, 25,000. Because now you're in oxygen. There's a lot more things that can go wrong. If a dude, if his mask isn't sealed properly and he jumps out, he could go hypoxic under canopy and then drift off into Netherland, not flying his canopy. So there's a lot more risk the higher up you go.
Are you guys doing HAHO stuff or you're doing?
Yeah, lots of HAHOs. Yeah, we work the HAHO stuff hardcore.
Can you explain to the listeners what the HAHO is?
So a HAHO is high altitude, high opening. So we'll jump off the back of the plane and deploy our parachute within like a 4 to 5 second delay. So you're just off the ramp, flying your body good and stable, and pitching your pilot chute. So you're under a fully operational canopy at 24,000 some odd feet, just under 25,000, because you're going to snivel down about 500 to 1,000 feet by the time you open. So you're at 24.5 roughly with a completely open canopy, way up there, silent. The people, if they were directly below you in the ground, couldn't hear your canopies open because you're so high. And we can fly and run with the wind really long distances, a lot further than I think. I mean, you can
That's
go
like 30 minutes under canopy, maybe even longer.
Or more. Right? Yeah, it depends. I've spent 45 minutes under canopy before, man. I mean, just cruising around. But yeah, you're up there. We immediately fly it up. We build a stack so the whole team's together. We're talking on comms the whole time, calling out stuff in the drop zone, lasing everything, marking waypoints. The lead guy is the nav guy. He's marking waypoints with an ISLID so that the whole team can see it. He's roping team members and stuff. If a dude gets lost in a cloud or something, he'll rope him and bring him back in, because it's really challenging to see at night, even with night vision on, because you got to think you're flying up there, especially if you're in more of an urban environment. There's all these city lights glowing in the background, and a dude goes in front of that in your canopy. You can't see him except for when his body actually blocks one of the lights and it blinks. So it's challenging to keep the team together. But we fly together as a team and then land completely silently on a drop zone. Typically, like in combat, we're going to check that drop zone to make sure nobody's there. We can land silently, cache our rucksacks, and then move out completely undetected.
Did you ever get the opportunity to do that in combat?
Nope. I wish I did. There was one or two times where we were alerted and we were going to go jump into combat, but it just never happened. Now, there's a lot of dudes in RRC that did do combat jumps, but I never personally got to while I was on a team.
What's some of your RRC trips that you can talk about, or just anything interesting that you think would either be a cool story or just kind of an eye-opening, I guess, for people listening?
Well, we developed and ran a clandestine reconnaissance unit while we were over there, an Afghan reconnaissance unit. And those dudes were really good dudes. We assessed and selected from the elite of the Afghans, and then put them through a similar training course and selection and pipeline like what we went through in RRC, and then ran those dudes out there. And that led me to, I did a bunch of trips doing that. I mean, we would task these guys, they'd go out and do low vis stuff. Sometimes we'd do low vis stuff. There was a lot of guys that necessarily didn't like it because you're not kicking indoors and killing bad guys anymore, but there's still a lot of risk to it. Cause there's a lot of times where I was by myself with no interpreter either. Cause my interpreter, he was a 60-something-year-old Afghan man. He's like, "Oh, Mr. Mike, I'm not a combat terp. And I'm not combat terp. I will not go outside." I'm like, "Yeah, you don't have to be a combat terp. I'll teach you how to shoot a pistol. We're just doing low vis." But a lot of times, so I had my terp teach me Dari. So that terp taught me Dari. And in one deployment, I understood Dari enough to where I could speak my way through checkpoints. And then he taught me Dari on how to do battlefield interrogation. But I liked it, man. I liked being out in the city. I got to see the Afghans, how they act in their normal life when I'm out there rolling around low vis. And there's a lot.
You guys are running out of safe houses. You guys aren't in like a base or a fob or anything.
Yeah, we did a little bit of both. At this time I was actually on a fob, but I had my own back exit out of the fob that was kind of like secretive. So all the traffic comes out of the main gate, but I had a little sneaky one that I could hop in and drop off the hill and go into town. And that's what, they had some DIA dudes there running sources and some other people running sources as well. And they did the same thing. We kind of used that same route.
We had a conversation, I think this morning, that I think would be cool to have on camera. We were talking about, you securing safe houses in Afghanistan and kind of how much they cost and, that whole.
You want to get into that?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
So that was one of the things that I learned. We were looking to get safe houses there in Afghanistan, in Kabul, Afghanistan.
What year is this? Do you remember? 10, 11?
2010, 11 time frame. Yeah, I think 10 or 11, maybe late 2009. I don't know. Yeah, I think it was 10 or 11. And my buddy Dylan Foreman was there with me. I was working with him. He was actually the program manager at the time. And so we were trying to procure cars and low-vis cars for our guys, dirt bikes and stuff, and then houses. And we found out that these houses in Afghanistan were like 35 to 45,000 US dollars a month.
That's
to
nuts.
rent.
That's
I'm like, bro, I could rent a house in Coronado, California on the beach for cheaper than that, bro. Like a mansion.
For a whole year or two.
Probably. And we were like, what the heck? Why is this? And these dudes told us, they're like, dude, all of our politicians own it. Like American politicians, British politicians, German politicians, French, Canadian, you name them, all the Five Eyes especially, nations associated with the United States, they all bought all that real estate. The interesting thing is they bought it prior to the war, bought it prior to 9/11. So they knew it was going to be an investment. And that leads us to things we can get into later on. But I know for a fact that war was completely contrived now because of the things that I saw. And it's hard for a lot of people to hear. I mean, dude, I spent 18 deployments in all these years fighting a fake war, but now I know it, and I just have to admit that it was fake.
What kind of things did you see that made you think, to come to that conclusion?
Well, we were funding the enemy massive scale. We had to use the Haqqani network, our enemy, to build our facilities when we were building the ARU compound. They build the building. I think it was like $250,000 they spent to build the building. It was condemned right away. We have to pay them to tear it down and rebuild it. But the thing is, we're paying the enemy to come onto our base and build us facilities, making them rich. These buildings should have cost like $40,000 to build, but we're paying them $250,000 to build it.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize. So when you're in American, even in special operations, and you have X amount of money to say build a compound, the U.S. government tells you who you can use. Who
you can use as a vendor. Yeah. Our vendor was our enemy. We were required to use the Haqqani network.
And did you ever run that up? Hey.
Oh, heck yeah, we did. We complained, but we had no choice. And they robbed us. They robbed us of money. So that happened. There's lots of other ways that that we were giving money to the enemy. Well, then we found some black market. This hasn't been talked about on a podcast.
And this is very unique because you and I were talking about this, and one of the things I didn't bring up, but my friend Jason is who linked me and you up, and he's, coming on the podcast soon. And we were all in. So I was in Afghanistan the same time you were, and, we were talking about this story that I'm going to let you dive into, and then I'll give a little bit of, my background on it. But this is interesting.
So the same German dudes that keyed us up to that all of our politicians bought this real estate prior to 9/11. By the way, they were buying houses a 3,000 square foot or so house, big American, standard size American house, good construction, cinder block walls, not just a mud hut. They were buying these houses for $2,500 was the standard price. $2,500. I mean, dude, if I could do that investment, throw 2,500 right now and rip 45 grand a month for 22 years, what an investment. But that's what was going on. Well, then those same German dudes told us, they were like, hey, there's something else we'd like you guys to help us out with. And we're like, what's that?
Well, just so my listeners know, the Germans were the real estate agents that you
Yes.
had gotten in contact when you guys were trying to procure the safe houses. Yeah.
Yeah, these guys were expat Germans, civilians. They weren't associated with any government or anything like that that we know of.
Yeah, I was about to say that you knew of.
We assumed that they were probably trying to gather from us, so we were very careful around them, but we gathered from them too. So these guys brought us to their house and they're like, hey, we got a problem. We've brought it up to the SEALs that we worked with. They couldn't do anything about it. We brought it up to the Green Berets that we work with. They couldn't do anything about it. Maybe you guys can. And we're like, well, what is it? So they bring us to their house and they're showing us night vision, ISLIDs. I'm talking all this kind of non-proliferable stuff we don't want in the hands of the enemy, of military gear everywhere. And they have this at their house. And we're like, what's up with this? They're like, we can buy this at the market in Kabul. And they're like, we shouldn't be buying this. They were like, we buy as much of it as we can just to get it off the market so that bad guys can't get it. And we're like, well, take us to the shop. So we got ready one day. They came and met us and they took us to the shop. Me and one of my buddies, Dylan Foreman. I'm sure he wouldn't have an issue with me saying his name. I know he wouldn't, so I'll mention him. He's a good dude. He said, he was like, hey, let's roll out. So we roll out, just me and him, just a concealed pistol, dressed up like civilian, kind of like trying to blend in like expats ourselves, roll up into this place. We see all this stuff. These Germans have been buying stuff there, so they had rapport with this guy. So they talked to him. He shows us everything. And then we bought some stuff, took it home, took pictures of it, sent it up the chain of command. We're like, look at this. And the JSOC commander flew down. I think General Petraeus actually flew down with him. They gave us like another $2,500. They said, go back and buy more. We're like, all right. So we go back in this place, buy more stuff, bring it in, lay it out, take pictures, all the serial numbers, SSE style, submit it up. This stuff was coming from shipping containers. A lot of it was from SF ODAs that was being stolen. And it was
out of Pakistan, right?
Out of Pakistan. Yep. So they were shipping the shipping containers through Pakistan. The U.S. military was, but we were allowing the Haqqani network and the Taliban to maintain our shipping containers. Come on, man. They were cutting the hinges off those things, taking everything out of it, welding the hinges back, repainting them, and shipping the containers over empty. So that containers after container after container, shipping containers, 40-foot shipping containers with entire military equipment for an entire unit were just getting completely emptied and then shipped over empty. So the U.S. government would receive them empty. Meanwhile, all that stuff was being sold on the black market. We ended up, after I left, my buddy Dylan and another dude, they went in there and actually installed a hidden camera in that place. B&E'd into that place, installed a hidden camera, and they caught American soldiers coming in there selling this stuff. They also caught some other government officials and stuff like that. Long story short, we ended up building a target package on the dude of that, the owner of that shop, and the Rangers ended up killing him later on. But there was a ton more shops, but we ended up passing the whole thing off to the FBI.
Yeah, so I was in Afghanistan that same time frame, and I was on a clandestine platform, and we were running a source network, and we kept hearing about it, these markets in Kabul, and so we were writing reports on it and sending that up. So it's funny how, but again, to your point, man, it was all our best technology. I mean, we were getting, I don't know if it was ever confirmed, but we were getting reports that they had knocked off an AH-64 Apache attack helicopter. That they had taken that we knew the stuff was coming from Pakistan. We were getting a lot of information on, the store and shop owners. And again, to your point, it was our best night vision, our best like IR devices. I mean, stuff, not only was that stuff worth thousands of dollars, but it was all ITAR stuff that that you definitely don't want your.
And we started seeing the bad guys lasing helicopters as we were coming in, shooting at us with lasers and stuff like that. So we knew they had night vision. They have lasers. So and we were still better trained and better capable. So even though they had the same gear, we could still kill them effectively, but it's not something that you want the enemy to have. But there was that, and then many other things as I got out and got into the Afghan Evac stuff, and I started seeing a lot of corruption where our government was funding Taliban and helping the Taliban come to the United States, So all these different things, and I've just come to find out that you really can't trust a lot of what our government says. I mean, in the military, I bought into it hook, line, and sinker. I was an idiot. I was duped, you know?
I think a lot of us did, bro. Like,
Yeah, we all were. We were all duped. You know, we just want to serve our country, and they take advantage of our caring heart to want to do good for our country and send us to fight wars that they're funding both sides of. They don't care about us, you know?
yeah, I think Sean Ryan's podcast has definitely exposed some of that, especially with, you know, Sarah Adams and, you know, us sending fucking millions of dollars to the Taliban. I mean, I know
We send about $45 million a week to the Taliban still.
That's ludicrous, especially for those of us that, you know, went over there and
There's I think they have about $8 billion sitting in an account that they have access to, the United States government gave them to. And on top of that, we send them another 45 to 80 million a week. And during the heyday, one more thing. And during the heyday of Afghanistan, during the evacs, we're trying to evac our dudes that fought loyally. My Afghan ARU guys who helped us rescue American citizens, they're still there. Our government has denied their packets. These dudes have basically essentially a TS security clearance, you know, a top secret security clearance, the way that we vetted them, polygraphs and everything. Our government denied their packets. All the ones that I have been denied, and we have to resubmit. But at the same time, U.S. State Department funded aircraft were flying into Kabul, flying out 100 Taliban a week at one point in time.
where were they going?
To Qatar. They were flying them into Qatar. They were going into the refugee camps with our Afghans. And then I found out through some of our Afghans, they were coming on to the States too. They were getting processed faster there and then coming on to the States. And they were talking crap. They were starting fights and stuff with our Afghans and getting our Afghans kicked out of the camps. Meanwhile, they were getting processed through because nobody would mess with them.
How did you, I mean, dude, what was that like for you to watch the fall of Afghanistan and everything that came with that?
Honestly, I was busy with work at the time and I wasn't paying attention to anything. And then this guy, a friend of mine named Ryan Andrews from South Alabama, had seen one of the podcasts that he saw the first Team House episode that I did. And he reached out to me and he was like, "Hey man, I'm trying to help these ARU guys. I worked with them as a contractor overseas." He's like, is there any way you can help me out? So I started looking into it. I wrote some memos and stuff like that. And then I ended up realizing there's a lot more to this. And so I started just doing it full time. Like I was working, and then every second off work, I was texting, trying to get dudes linked up, get them in the airfield to get them out. And then it ended up to the point where I was like, there's a lot of groups out there, like Scott Mann with Project, Task Force Pineapple and all those groups that were out there. And I'm like, we're all former military people. Let's work together as a team. So I started reaching out to these groups. I'm like, hey, you guys want to meet with us? Let's partner our resources. Let's partner our assets. We've got connections that you guys may not have, and you guys may have connections we don't have. So that's why I created Project Exodus. I brought together all my dudes that were all working this separately. And then we tried to start rallying the other groups. And ultimately what happened was there was a guy named Travis that I ended up driving with a lot, Sarah Adams, and then Scott Mann and a lot of other people ended up kind of coming together and creating this Moral Compass Federation. And that was cool. And it's doing a lot of good to help people. It just kind of got a little too political for me. I had kind of had my fill with politics at that point in time because I had talked to Republican, Democrat. I wasn't biased at all. If you're going to help us, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. And I got help from both sides. Minimal help, but all the help was just basically like it's just pencil whipping. You know what I mean? Like you can say I helped because I put a check mark in the block. That's the only help we really got. They didn't do anything substantial because they just don't care, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So kind of, refocusing back on, some RRC stuff. I know you did some stuff in Africa. Can you talk about any of that?
Yeah, it was pretty uneventful. We were just essentially there to gather intel for like American citizens who were being held hostage basically in that country. And in turn, we were training Indige and running these big Indige armies. Like I think we had roughly about 700 dudes, I think, in that one like battalion worth of dudes we had. They did their own stuff and trained. They even ran their own missions unilateral without us, but we kind of would pass them intel and then task them from time to time and sometimes roll out with them. But for the most part, we were just gathering intel, and we were there. For example, one of the things that we did while we were there, we found good intel saying that there was an American citizen hostage held at this one spot. And so what they did is they alerted a troop from SEAL Team 6, because the Horn of Africa was under the command of SEAL Team 6. So when I was working there, I was working for them. And so they launched a troop over that ended up doing a raid to try to rescue that hostage. So that's what we were doing. We were the eyes and ears.
Were they able to
teams.
rescue anybody?
I don't think they did on that one. And then there was another time that they had a raid that hit. They went on the beach and raided this thing. Some Somali pirates on the beach. I think DJ Shipley actually talks about that. I think he was on that mission, or maybe a different one. But I was there during that time. And dude, it was brutal. Those guys got their tails handed to them. They hit a hard target with machine guns, barricaded and all that stuff. And they couldn't breach that thing and just got ran off the beach. So there was some legitimate targets there. And then there was another time where there was a hostage, an Italian hostage that we found. And the Italians went in there, some Italian, I guess, tier 1 element went in there to do the hostage rescue. They got their tails handed to them too. It was kind of crazy, man. So
yeah, people don't realize Africa is savage, man.
Yeah. And I think the elements, I think the guys that rolled up on that beach house, I don't know, maybe they just didn't prepare for it properly. Because you would think that would be a relatively simple, mission. But I don't know. DJ was there, and I think I've seen him talk about it. I think it's that same mission. And it was crazy, man.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So at what point did you meet your wife?
I met her at a barber shop in Columbus, Georgia. I was in RRC at the time, had long hair and a beard and stuff. And I'd been going to the same place I'd been getting my hair cut all these years that knew that I was in the military. And I'm like, hey, I don't need an Army haircut anymore. Just trim up around the ears a little bit, clean it up a little bit. And they would shave me up into an Army haircut and cut my beard all off. And I'm like, come on, man. Why can't you listen? So I was trying to find a new barber shop. And one of my buddies was like, hey, man, you got to try this place out. And so I went up there and I met my wife, sat in her chair. She was married at the time to another guy. And I talked to her. And then she tried to hook me up with one of her friends. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm too busy. I don't really have time to date girls anyway. So then I was deployed, but me and her became friends on Facebook. I used to have Facebook back in the day, not with my real name, but I had a fake Facebook account. And that's a whole nother story I'll tell you. So then I start talking to her on Facebook or whatever. And then I see her that she's getting a divorce. She's like, I hate men. I'm so sick of men or whatever. And I was like, hey, well, what happened? And she starts telling me, I was like, well, we should hang out sometime. And she's like, all right, cool. And so then the first time I go to hang out with her, she invites me to the apartment to go to the pool at her sister's apartment and hang out. And she introduces me to everyone as Jesse Stevens. That was my alias on Facebook. And I was like, well, it's actually not Jesse. It's actually Mike. Yeah. And she felt so embarrassed. She's like, I didn't even know your name, And I'm like, oh, sorry about that, But yeah, we hit it off. We dated. And then I went overseas right off the bat. Like we hung out for a week or so and hit it off. I went overseas. We stayed in contact, texting back and forth. I came back from that deployment for only a month or two. I came back from that deployment. I took her to the beach. We hung out on the beach and then literally got the call hey, my senior enlisted advisor was like, hey, I need you to go back over to Afghanistan. We're short a dude and you just came from over there. So you don't have to do train up or anything. We'll just send you right back over. And he's like, are you cool with that? I'm like, yeah. So I left a month later and went right back over. And so then came back from that. And then she ended up getting pregnant while I was back that time. And then we got married in December. And then our daughter was born the following summer in June.
So your daughter's born and you're still in RRC?
Yes. Yep. She was born while still in RRC.
So what was that transition like for you? You've lived this, Spartan lifestyle of, war and training and, you're at the shiny tip of the spear. You've seen a lot of death and destruction. How does your mindset change a little bit now that you're married and you have a kid?
It does change you in ways that you don't even realize until it happens. So at the time, right after my daughter was born, I saw this beautiful, beautiful baby come into the world. And it made me cry, dude. I was like, dude, this is the most awesome thing. And so now I know not only do I have a wife, but I have a kid that I need to be around for. And so I went back overseas to condos that time. And I remember we had surged so many task forces in Afghanistan that we didn't have enough 160th to go around. So there was elements of Delta Force, elements of Rangers, elements of SEAL Team 6 guys that didn't have 160th flying them because we didn't have enough. So we had, where I was at in Condos, we had DS birds, direct support birds. So these are regular Army trained helicopter, actually National Guard helicopter pilots. They were the greatest dudes, but they were honest. They're like, we don't train for this. We were flying daytime, hard stand to hard stand. That's what we trained. I'm like, now you're flying night brownout conditions every night. Dude, so we crashed. We had certified crash landings regularly.
We have a 160th guy coming on pretty soon, 19 combat tours. I didn't realize how much helicopter training goes into the guys in the 160th. I mean, flying a helicopter is hard in and of itself, but those dudes over the 160th, man. So I can see, listening to Phil's his name, Phil will be coming on. I can see like how that could happen, man, because there's a lot of certs they have to go just to be able to fly, with JSOC.
Those dudes, those 160th dudes, that helicopter is like an extension of their body, dude. I mean, those guys are impressive, man. But yes, we had DS birds. We were flying into targets. We were hitting trees with the rotors and breaking off wheels and fuel spraying through the aircraft on landing. Like we did this one target. We flew in, the bird came down and hit so daggum hard, boom, broke the wheels off of it. And then and I'm like, get off the bird.
I bet that felt great on your back.
Oh yeah, it was brutal. It just jars you like a concussion. And then I was like, hey, get off the bird, get off the bird. I was like, this bird hit hard. We need to get off this thing. I thought it was going to roll over. And then everybody like starts pushing back because I'm an RRC guy tagging along with a Ranger platoon. So I'm like, I'm not the primary mission. My thing's doing low vis during the day. They just let me go out with them at night. So I'm like, let's go, guys, let's go. I'm on the back of the bird. I'm like, let's get off this bird before we die. And they start pushing back. And I'm like, look out the window. We're 200 feet in the air again. I'm like, crap, sit back down. They circled back around and we crashed into the target building. So we breached the target building with the helicopter. And then we got out and then they're like, hey, can y'all get the wheel and bring it back to us? And we're like, no, dude, that thing's like 500 pounds. We can't carry that thing. So they ended up having to send another bird after us. But back to the point, it was the first time that I was like, God, please. I would pray every time. I would be like, please, God, let me get safely to the ground and make it to where I can take the fight to the enemy. Don't let me die on infill because then I stand no chance to fight. And I said, give me enemy to fight. That was my prayer always. Help me get safely to the target because I was worried about getting through IED-laden territory. And I'm like, if I get blown up on the way, I can't even fight the enemy. If I crash on the way in, I can't fight the enemy. So I would say in those prayers that get me there safely and then give me enemy that will fight so that I can kill them. So those are my prayers. Completely pagan prayers, but
yeah. I think just kind of taking it back to, your wife and your kid and that mindset. Did you find yourself, maybe taking less risk? Not that you were, a risk taker to begin with, because it sounds like a lot of the things you did were calculated, but did you find like your mental like shift start like changing a little bit?
Yeah, it did. So I still did all the same stuff, but I then in my mind realized the risk. Before I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof. I knew it was risky, but nothing could hurt me. But when I had that little baby at home, I realized I can be hurt now. And I'd already known that I could be hurt, but it still was 10 foot tall and bulletproof. But that just kind of takes you a step back and gives you a little more caution because not only you're living for yourself, now you're living for other people. Like, that kid needs their father growing up. You know what I mean? And I feel so sorry for the Gold Star families out there that don't have a father raising those kids. And so that was in the back of my mind. I didn't want to not be there for my kids. So yeah, a little bit more caution was added, I guess.
That's a great point, man. We have not only a podcast, but we're working on, a documentary of sorts that originated from a Gold Star spouse. So I'm glad you bring that point up. What, after you do your trip after your daughter's born, when you come back, is it starting to get a little bit harder to leave home?
Not really, because I hadn't bonded with my daughter. Like I told you, when I was in RRC, there was times where I wouldn't see my wife or anybody in my family for like 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks out of the whole year because we were just gone nonstop. Like deploying overseas for 4 months, sometimes going back, coming home for a couple months and going back for another 2 or 3 months or 4 months. And then in between that is just nonstop training, free fall proficiency, shooting, long range stuff, surveillance detection, counter, all the skills, all of our core skill sets, we refreshed every training cycle. And we didn't, and we couldn't do it on base. That's the thing. A lot of people don't know that out there. But the training that we do, even in the line Ranger battalions, is not legal on base. It's too dangerous. Like, how's that even possible? You got military bases to train military, but you can't even train there because it's too dangerous. So Ranger Regiment, RRC specifically, outsourced their training to private property. So we were all over the country, New Mexico, Alabama, Georgia, all over the place, Florida, on private pieces of land where we could do whatever we wanted, as dangerous as we wanted, blowing charges, shooting stuff, shooting right next to each other. You know, but you can't do that stuff on Fort Benning. Like, we couldn't have snipers engaging targets while dudes are assaulting in close range, but these dudes are precision fire. Can't do that on Fort Benning, but we could do it off post. So
Bureaucracy.
yeah, it is. I mean, training on military bases for a special operations unit can be a significant challenge unless the training's extremely basic.
So, I mean, at some point you leave RRC. What happened, or how did that come about?
So I didn't want to leave there. I loved it, man. I loved that job, but it's a very small unit. And within the unit, we had, I think 9 E8 positions within the unit, within that company in the Ranger Regiment. So that's one company in the Ranger Regiment that's allocated 9 E8 positions. Well, I went there late. I was a senior E7 when I went to selection. I was eligible for E8 when I went to selection. So I turned it down the very first year after I got there. And then the next year I was eligible for E8. I declined it again. And then the third year after I was there, I was like, hey, I'm not going to decline it anymore, because I was already kind of an assistant team leader, about to be an assistant team leader. I'm like, I'll go ahead and accept it, and maybe I'll be a team sergeant eventually. And I didn't want to, like, dude, the pace is so fast, and the level of stuff that you have to know, even at 2 or 3 years there on a team in RRC, I did not feel ready to be a team leader at all, or even an assistant team leader, because I wanted to stay at the lower level because there's still stuff I was trying to learn. But I ended up moving to Team 2, taking over as an assistant team leader because I pinned E8. So I promoted to E8, moved over there. So then a lot of other dudes pinned E8 as well. And then another list came out. And next thing you know, we have 18 master sergeants in a company that's only allocated 9. So we were allowed to have a little over authorization, but eventually the sergeant major came down. He's like, hey, man, I need you guys to go back to the line Ranger Battalion and be platoon sergeants for a little while, spread the knowledge back there, and then you can come back to RRC. And I was
So
like,
platoon sergeants are E8s in the regiment?
no, they're E7s, but a lot of RRC guys go there as E8s and do platoon sergeant time. So a lot of RRC guys end up getting pushed out as E8s, and then a lot of times they come back. So I got pushed out as an E8, went to 3rd Ranger Battalion to be the mortar platoon sergeant. And enjoyed it, man. I didn't know if that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to leave RRC, but I was forced to by the regimental sergeant major, who the guy at the time, I couldn't stand that guy. Still to this day, not the greatest guy, but whatever. It is what it is, and it set the path. And I got to work with those mortar guys. Many of those guys I still talk to this day. A lot of them I still talk to this day. And I didn't realize, it's one of those things that you do your military career and you think that you're trying to help others and be impactful, but you just don't know, but the mortar platoon showed me that I did have an impact. I hear from those guys pretty regularly, and I'm happy that I was a positive influence in their lives, I think.
I mean, from private to squad leader, RRC team guy, now you're, in charge of a mortar platoon. How did your leadership style evolve with each kind of step up the leadership chain, I guess?
That's a good question. So in the beginning, as a young dude, I kind of like reigned with an iron fist, right? Because like if you reign with an iron fist, nobody can, get out of control. But then as I learned that I just didn't like that, I wanted to be that guy that everybody was not scared of. I wanted to be the guy that everybody feels like they can approach, but that if you do wrong, I'm going to hammer smash you. And so I just developed to be that guy that you can ask me anything. You're never going to bug me. I'm never going to blow up on you. But if you're wrong, I will hold you accountable. And so that's what I morphed into. Then as I go to RRC, let's back it up a little bit. I go to the RIP cadre, and I ratcheted it into absolute stone cold, harsh, pure discipline, and like just hammered. Like I used to stand in the chow hall, and dudes would be standing at parade rest at the chow hall like this with their eyes looking straight forward, and I would walk by, and I'd be like right here looking in these dudes' faces. And they would like look at me. I'd make them do push-ups and get to the back of the line for breaking ranks, or for breaking discipline, basically. So I harped on it hardcore there because the way I looked at it, I was the gatekeeper to the Ranger Regiment. I don't want a dude to get through. If I can possibly make this dude quit, I want to, because then he's probably not going to likely quit in combat. So I was there. Then I go to RRC. There, it's grown men. like everybody's an E7 or E8. Like we had some E6s, but for the most part, everybody was E7s and E8s. So it was your own leadership then. Like I was making sure I was right. I was making sure I was on time. I was making sure I showed up, because a lot of things are decentralized. Like we'd have a team of 6 dudes, but there's times where like I would be at a course over here, and then another dude's in a course in this country, and another dude's in a course in that state. And then we got 2 dudes deployed overseas augmenting, Delta Force or SEAL Team 6 or whatever. So we're like all over the darn place. Oops, sorry about that. So we're all over the dang place. So you kind of have to like kind of refocus on yourself. And it's such a laid back attitude that it made me a lot more laid back, because I stopped caring about, are your sideburns a little too long? I stopped caring about, did you forget to shave this morning? I stopped caring about that stuff and started caring about true professionalism. Are you good at your job? Can you perform? Are you physically fit? Are you professional? I don't care if you have a beard and long hair. And so then I go to the mortar platoon, and I kind of had to balance it back a little bit, because I get there. Thank God the sergeant major at the time, a guy named Vic Ballesteros, an absolute great dude, an absolute amazing human being. I love that guy, but he was super chill. And that's what I needed, because I was super chill as a platoon sergeant. And he'd come up to me and be like, hey, Eddie. I'm like, what's up, Sergeant Major? That's what they call me, Eddie. I'm like, what's up, Sergeant Major? He's like, look at your boy's sideburns over here. I look, this dude's got like Elvis chops. I'm like, yeah, my bad, Sergeant Major. I'll get on. But I let them slack with their hair and certain things a little bit, because I don't care as long as they're professional. I mean, they weren't crazy out of rags, but a little bit. But he had to ratchet me in on a couple things like that. But I tried to take that relaxed leadership even to the next level at the mortar platoon. I was like, you guys are stuck, regimented. Let's break out of that. So I tried to do at least once every 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe once a month, I would do an off-post PT event. And I would have them like, you're wearing civilian clothes, civilian PTs. We drive 45 minutes north and run mountains and the Pine Mountain Trail or something like that, or run this Providence Canyon, or run on the River Walk or whatever. And the dudes liked it. It's not like hut everyday formation. We wouldn't even have a formation. Formation would be empty. Mortar platoon's not there. First sergeant already knows we're going off post. And these dudes loved that stuff because they had never seen it before. And then I started thinking like the mortars weren't being used because the rules of engagement had gotten constrained, because now we're towards the end of the war. So they're not firing mortars a lot. So my dudes were bummed. They didn't want to stay in the military. And I'm like, well, how can I make them want to stay in the military and be Rangers? So I was like, well, we've got all this other capabilities we can do. So I started sending dudes to sniper school and to SODIC and to like battlefield interrogation courses and other courses like that. Some of the more senior leaders. So they had those skills, and now they could go overseas and they could tell the platoon sergeant in the Ranger platoon they're with, like, hey, I can shoot mortars, but I can also do battlefield interrogation. And if you need an extra sniper, I can do that too. And I'm assigned a sniper rifle. So our sniper platoon at the time had, a lot of people don't realize this, but in the regiment, we have black side rifles and then we have white side rifles. So we have the guns that other special operations get.
Can you explain the difference? A lot of people may not know what that means.
Yeah. So like, for example, regular armies issued like a 9mm Beretta pistol. Well, on the black side, we had 9mm Glock pistols and Glock 22 40 caliber pistols. For example, the regular armies issued an M249 squad automatic weapon SAW, right? Machine gun. We were issued Mark 46s. It's a lightened titanium, shortened, shorty barrel, parabarrel, super lightweight assault saw. That's what we had. I mean, the things are like $20,000 a piece, or probably more than that. But we had both, because we get what the Army issues, we get what the Army issues to SOF, and we get what the Army issues to JSOC as well. So we had a lot to choose from. So the snipers in sniper platoon, they're using the black side stuff. It's the best stuff. So they were using that. I'm like, well, we got the Army had just come out with this new sniper rifle called the SAS. And I can't remember what that stands for. It's like the M110 SAS, I think. It was actually a pretty good rifle. And so I said, well, you guys aren't using those. Can my mortars get them? So I got them assigned to the mortar guys. So not only did we have dudes sniper qualified, but they had an assigned sniper rifle that they could take overseas with them too. So that's what I tried to do. I tried to lead too, because I noticed a lot of the guys were like, the squad leaders would be like, privates, go clean up the range, pick up all the brass. And I'm like, dude, I was shooting too. So as the master sergeant, I'm out there picking up brass with the privates and the squad leaders. And it's just kind of the lead. I think this is a lead by the example thing. And I didn't want to kick them in the balls about it, but I just went out and started picking up brass.
True leaders lead from the front, man. I've seen that my whole career personally in the military and, you know, in the civilian and LE, man. True leaders lead from the front, dude. I always had this mantra. I was raised a similar way, man. Like, don't ask your guys, for the most part, to do things you're not willing to do, unless, you know, you have somewhere in a leadership role.
You have to be. And sometimes that's the case. Yeah. But I didn't have anything to do. So I'm like on the range with them. I'm picking up brass. And the squad leader's like, hey, Sergeant, you ain't got to pick up brass. The private's got it. And I'm like, I shot rounds too. So I'm picking them up too.
And then that puts them on.
You just see them start bending down, picking up brass.
Yeah.
Because they weren't picking it up either.
But then that builds cohesion, man. And it builds, you know, because, you know, and I guarantee your soldiers remember that. And, you know, then that leadership lesson carries forward with them where they go, man. And I think that's a little leadership nugget that you just dropped, that we kind of expanded on a little bit. So, you know, hopefully people that are listening to that or listening to this podcast, you know, they kind of catch some of that. Did you get a chance to deploy at all when you were the platoon sergeant over at the?
I did. My last deployment was there. It was my least eventful deployment. It was funny. They were like, hey, we got to fill the Omega positions. I'm like, dude, done it 2 times. Why not a 3rd time? Put me in it. And I was like, as a master sergeant, I'm the best guy for that. And they were like, nah, we're going to send some E6s and E7s. I've never done it before. I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, what am I going to do? Because the mortar platoon sergeant had no job. The mortar platoon sergeant had been doing the Omega stuff. And so they were like, nah, you've already done it. We're sending somebody else. And they were like, for your professional development, we're going to have you be in the jock and learn how to run the jock as a jock NCO. And I'm like, or as a jock LNO. And I'm like, dude, I've been in a jock 18 times. It's not like it's anything new. It's not like I don't understand how this thing functions. But it was kind of cool. I was the liaison to RC Southeast. So I would brief. This was at the end of the war now. So JSOC, Rangers, Delta Force, and guys like that had to start briefing their missions to the conventional military. Because before we would just go in and scorched earth, and then they would have to clean up the aftermath. They're like, who just killed all these people and burned down all these houses? And then the locals are pissed at them. So we had to give them awareness of where we were going so they could be prepared for it. So every night, I mean, they were doing a lot of missions. Almost every night, I was having to go over to the main base where the generals were, and I had to brief a 2-star, 1 or 2-star Marine Corps general and his staff of like 5 colonels on everything. And they would try to sharpshoot. It was funny. They would try to sharpshoot sometimes, but they never tried to sharpshoot me. I guess because I was a master sergeant. So the mortar platoon sergeant or the mortar platoon leader that I had ended up leaving midway through that deployment. I got a new platoon leader, and he was a West Point grad. And he and I didn't get along that great at first. He's not a bad guy, but it took a lot of molding, I think, from me to get that dude straight. But he took over and shared the LNO job with me. And I would tell him, I'm like, hey, sir, this is how we do stuff. And then I let him brief these generals, and they would tear him apart, dude. They would rip that dude to shreds. And he's like, why do they do that to me and not you? And I'm saying the same thing. I was, because they don't trust you because you're a lieutenant. And they know I've been doing this for a while. But it was kind of cool. Did that.
And then for our listeners who don't understand, they're kind of what the jock, I know what it is. Will you just explain a little bit?
It's just a planning room. It's like a massive building with massive screens that are monitoring everything that element is getting ready to go after or looking forward to go after. Targeting, ISR feeds, all the staff, officers, ops, NCOs, support staff, comms, everything's managing everything
kind of paint the picture for everybody. It's kind of like, from my recollection, it's like a big movie theater, but it's tiered seating that goes all the way down, and there's just tons of people and
subject matter experts at everything.
Yeah, and it's almost like a NASA launch room where there's just people everywhere with headsets and headphones.
That's a good way to put it. It's like a NASA launch room for a mission. Everybody's got it. So you'd have one of those, and you have 2 Ranger platoons that are there, and every mission they do is tracked by that one. And then at another place, you got Delta Force or SEAL Team 6, and they have one of those that monitors their missions too.
Yeah, it's just like a big, so that everybody and all the different entities, logistics, intelligence, aircraft, and everything in between. So it's all in one place. So that's what a joint operations center is. Sorry.
Yeah. And while you're on the mission, and while the guys are on the missions, like this was my first time ever watching it from the rear. So you're sitting there in the stadium, sitting on these massive TV screens, and I'm watching the pred feeds and stuff like that as the Rangers are going out. You can just see their thermal signatures as they're going out, clearing the targets, killing the bad guys and stuff like that. So it was unique for me to be in that position. I tried to influence the line battalion guys a couple times. There was one time broad daylight. I'm up in the jock, and they're like, hey, we got a target. One of our targets is driving right by the base right now. Like they had him GPSed. He's driving right by the base. They're like, he's going to pass by the front gate of the base in like 15 minutes if he keeps along this road. I was like, give me a Hilux. I'll go roll that dude up by myself. They're like, you can't do that. I'm like, give me a couple dudes. We'll roll them up. You know, they're like, give me a squad of Rangers. And that's what I actually asked for. But I could do it by myself if you want. And give me a squad of Rangers. We'll roll them out. They were like, nah. And I'm like, dude, we do this all the time. Rangers do. Like these platoon leaders were like, oh, they couldn't fathom doing something like that. I'm like, yeah, this is not a outside the box mission. We can do this. Dude, they spun up an entire British Army task force. And I had to wait forever. And we rolled this dude up. But it was a boring deployment, but I got to see it from a different perspective. But that's the deployment I did with the mortars.
Did you feel like your career and your military time shifting?
Yeah, I did. And after that, I had already made plans at that point to go out to the freefall school. So I think by that deployment, I already knew that I was probably going to go out to the freefall school. And in a while, I'd already been working that. So
was that kind of just to be home a little bit more, kind of, focus on the family a little bit more, or can you talk about like that decision process?
I don't know that we did. So my wife was happy now that I was gone from RRC. Yeah, I was still deploying and doing a lot of training with the Rangers, but I was home a lot more as a line battalion guy. And then I was going to go back to RRC. Actually, after the mortar platoon time, I'd already had it lined up. Excuse me. I was going to go back to RRC and take over as a team sergeant. And then she was like, I don't want you to do that. Excuse me, I'm burping for some reason. But she was like, I don't want you to do that. And I was like, man. And then I kind of got into a pissing contest with the sergeant major of RRC at the time. He and I are good now, good buddies. But at the time, he was like, I was like, hey, I want to come back and be a team sergeant. He's like, how am I going to put you in a team sergeant, blah, 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 when I have other guys? I'm like, because there was one guy that was on my old team who was getting ready to retire, kind of letting himself go. And I'm like, this dude needs to just be retired. Let me take over his team. And he was kind of going back and forth with me. And I was like, you know what? The heck with you, dude. I'm going to do something else. So I started looking at ROTC and then was going to go to University of Hawaii and be the senior military professor or military science instructor or whatever at the campus in American Samoa. But that ended up falling through. I thought it was going to be cool. We're going to move out of the South Pacific and live out there. But they wouldn't let me take my family. It was still classified as a hardship tour. And I was like, dude, the whole point's to be with my family. So then somebody told me that they would take E8s out at the freefall school, which there's no E8 position. There's one E8 position out at the freefall school. And I was like, okay. So I talked to the sergeant major out there and he's like, if you will write me a letter saying that you will decline E9, I'll take you. And I was like, oh, easy. I don't want to be an E9. Declined E9, boom, got orders out the free fall school, went out there and started doing that.
How long were you out there?
About 3.5 years or so, 3.5, 4 years.
What was it like teaching out there?
What was it like doing?
Teaching out there? I mean, that's in Yuma, right?
Yeah.
So you're kind of away from most of the military bases, and although you're in the desert.
Mm-hmm. It was different for me because I didn't go through that course. I've never been there before. I didn't go to free fall school there. I went to free fall school at the JSOC course. So I'd never seen that place. It was all new to me. And I show up, and after about a month of being there, the current NCOIC of the basic course was like, hey, I'm going to make you one of the detachment NCOICs. And I was like, what? I'm like, I don't even know how this program works. Like, I'm brand new here. He's like, don't worry. So I was already MFFI certified as like an instructor, but I had not evaluated out. So the course is about 6 months. When I was in RRC, I got to go. Remember I told you I came back, me and my wife got together, and then I had to leave about a month later for that deployment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I brokered a deal with the sergeant major of RRC. His name at the time, good dude. I said, hey, I was like, if I go do this, I wanted to deploy anyway, but if I can get something out of it, I was like, can I go to the MFFI course out at Yuma? It's like 150 jumps, and I just wanted to get more jumps. He's like, all right, you get me a cost analysis, you put everything together, and I'll send you. I'm like, all right. So I went to that deployment, came back, put in for that, went out to the MFFI course, spent 3 months out there just jumping, graduated the course. But if you're going to stay at Yuma to be an instructor, then you have to go on to a shadow phase where you shadow 3 courses with a senior instructor evaluating you, and then you get signed off. So I had been through the course, but I had not done the shadow phase because I never worked at the schoolhouse. So I show up out there. I had to go through the shadow phase. While I was shadowing, I was running a course as a detachment NCOIC. Yeah. So it was not, I mean, it was a little stressful because I'm having to pass while then running the course too. So it was kind of weird. But then I did that for a year and then ended up needing the neck surgery, which you've been working on my neck, which is still bothering me. Had to get my neck fused and I couldn't do anything for about 6 or 7 months. So I asked the sergeant major, I was like, hey, can I go be the NCOIC of Jump Master? Because the NCOIC of Jump Master was getting ready to go back down to the basic course. He wanted to go back down there because there's not a lot of jumping at the Jump Master course.
When you say Jump Master, was it the Jump Master for the HAHO course?
MFF Jump Master, Military Freefall Jump Master. It's all right there at Yuma. And I said, can I be the NCOIC of Jump Master? Because you need somebody and I can't jump. And there's not a lot of jumping there. And he's like, absolutely. So I went over and took over as the NCOIC of Jump Master. And I was recovering, healing my neck up for like 6 or 7 months. And then after that, I added jumping to the course because jumping used to be in the course, but they had taken it out due to lack of equipment. We didn't have the funding out there was atrocious. Like that's one of the things leaving the Ranger Regiment, I was blown away how little funding the freefall school got. And the SF dudes that were there were telling me, they're like, you think this is bad? You ought to see group. And I was like, what? And that's how I realized how spoiled we were in the regiment. So because of the lack of equipment, they took away jumping, but I brought it back, added in tandems actually to the Jump Master course. We did that stuff. And then after about a year there, I was getting ready to retire. And I asked the sergeant major if I could go to the instructor course. It's probably the coolest job to have there. You're teaching the new instructors. So that course that I went through 3 months of 150 jumps, I was teaching that now. And so I went there and thoroughly enjoyed it. My last, I'd say, year and a half I spent there.
What was the decision point to get out of the military or to retire?
Well, ever since doing the Omega stuff, I had planned on retiring and go to ground branch when I got out. So that was the plan. And I was actually doing that process at the time. I was going through the process. I got picked up out of like 100 packets. I was there was 100 packets. They selected 10 of us. And I was one of the 10 selected, and then went on through the security screening and all that stuff, did the polygraphs and all that kind of stuff. And then ultimately, I told you, I was honest on my polygraph and they dinged me, but they wanted me to come back later on, but ultimately it didn't because by then I had gotten rolled up into the contracting realm. I was, I guess, moonlighting at the JSOC course. So when we didn't have a class and schedule at the MFFI course, sometimes we'd have about a month break in between classes because we had to refit equipment and stuff like that. I asked the NCOIC, which was a buddy of mine, Kai Christensen, super good dude. He's a 10th group guy. Super good dude. I was like, hey bro, can I go teach over the JSOC course? They're asking me to come, but I need your approval. He's like, yeah, just get me over there if you can. I'm like, sweet. So I went and worked it, and then I got him over there, started working it too. So I started bringing guys from the Yuma course over to see how JSOC runs. Because I'm like, dude, if we can make Yuma more like JSOC, we can get more jumps in more effectively, and our dudes are trained better. So I started bringing those guys in. But while I was working the JSOC courses, my buddy Ray Plasterer, actually, he was working them too, and he got me in on that. So I started working those. And then there was a guy named Raul Bocanegra, former, I think he was a 1st group guy, maybe a 7th group guy. And he was asked to start a freefall program for MARSOC because MARSOC was, relatively new still, a few years old, but they didn't have they had a freefall program, but it was piggybacked off of Force Recon. And Force Recon has a really good freefall program, but they wanted something better. They wanted something comparable to JSOC. And just for those out there, I will say the Force Recon freefall school, from what I've seen, it's the best of the best out there below JSOC. And then MARSOC is now above that. But so they went around and saw Delta Force jump, SEAL Team 6 jump. They jumped with RRC and some other units. And he was like, they wanted their program to look like RRCs. So he asked me, he's like, hey, you're getting ready to retire. Will you come work this for me? So right off the bat, I was like, cool, I got work. So I was doing JSOC contracts, teaching the closed course, the freefall basic course for JSOC right after I retired as a contractor. And then I was teaching the MARSOC courses. Well, then after doing all the JSOC courses, I bumped into some dudes that were teaching this Navy EOD course. And then they asked me to do that. So, and that one was really a small group of people that got to do that. So I did that. And then I started doing Archangel, started doing all kinds of other stuff, man.
Cool. Well, I think we're going to start your transition. But before we do that, let's take a quick break.
Cool. Sounds good.
Man, kind of picking back up where we left off. I think, when we took the break, we were kind of, you're transitioning out of the military and you're going into the civilian world. You know, you kind of had a pretty smooth transition as far as like, retiring and having a job. Some people have to like kind of sort that out. So you fell into something. Well, I don't know if it's luck, bro. I mean, you've done a lot of things to set yourself up. I don't think you give yourself the credit. We talk a lot about that, but
yeah, sure.
You had these things, and so you're kind of still doing something you like, and you're getting paid a good wage for it, and you're still going through the retirement thing. But you've paid like a physical toll. You've wrecked your body. I mean, we've already talked about you got your neck fused. I know you caught some injuries. That's where your Purple Heart came from. And I did, hear you talk about some of your mental battles a little bit on the Team House podcast. So, I kind of want to start with some of the physical stuff too. Years of rucking, jumping, fighting, your neck's wrecked. You got your knees rebuilt. I don't think we talked about that.
Yeah.
How did you keep your body Ranger ready despite, the punishment? You're a pretty fit dude. We were actually just talking about it a minute ago off camera.
When I was in the military, I was lucky that my body just didn't break. I could push hard, and I could even get broken and my body could still function. I don't know why. I think maybe I was lucky there. I never had any injuries that really took me out of the mix, except for when the one time I snapped this knee. I actually did that off duty playing softball, and then snapped that. The grenade shrapnel here, I had to get surgery from that. But other than that, no injuries really slowed me down my whole career. And then until later on, I got neck surgery, but all that stuff took a toll. I mean, when you're walking with 100+ pounds on your back, 30, 40 miles across, rugged mountains, it takes a toll on every joint, like you not just walking the distance, but as you're walking, nobody's perfect. Our balance, a lot of this is at nighttime. You roll an ankle just a little bit under the load of a 120-pound rucksack and fatigue. It may not hurt. It may not completely tear anything, but it causes minor injuries and all this stuff starts adding up. Luckily I was able to get through most of the career like that, but now I'm having to really rehabilitate myself. The injuries didn't start catching up to me until really right after I retired. Even when I'm in the end of my career out at Yuma at the freefall school, I had a young dude who was in the, he was the pharmacist tech. And I used to go in there to pick up my prescription medic because I was eating Percocets, Tramadol, Ambien, and everything, Adderall, like Tic Tacs, drinking alcohol just to function. So this guy knew me because I was always picking up my prescriptions. And there was a ranger in the clinic, and this dude had been talking to this ranger and young ranger guy who knew me. And he goes, "Man, I want to train to be SF dude." And so the ranger was like, "You need to talk to Mike Edwards. He's the fittest dude probably out here." And I was like, "Really? I don't know about that, but I mean, I'm a ranger, but I can train you." So I started training this kid, and he was 22 years old at the time. I was 44, so I was like I was 40. That was another guy. So I was 40, and he was 22 years old. So I'm almost twice his age. And I took this kid, and I was hurting a little bit, taking off on a ruck march. And I'm like, man, I hope this knee doesn't slow me down. I just keep pushing past the pain. I look back, and old boy's way back there. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, dude, I was crushing 22-year-old dudes even right as I ended my career. But not long after that, it started taking a toll. And I think it was because of all the travel, doing all the free fall stuff. I wasn't focused on fitness as much as I should, and recovery and rehab. I was more focused on the jumping, and the jumping takes a toll on your body, but because I wasn't working out and rehab, and I did some working out, but dude, I was working from 2 a.m., getting up at 2 a.m. and jumping till dark, dude. There was not a lot of time to work out when you're doing the free fall stuff. So the letting my fitness slack after I retired, I think is what caused a lot of these injuries to come to a head. And now I'm working to rehab them.
Yeah. Great point. I've noticed like all you special operations sites, you guys are really able to push past physical ailments by mental endurance. Is that something you think you learned throughout your course working in special operations?
Yeah. Well, I think it's something that, you can learn, and then it just becomes habit because you're with a team of guys, and if you have an injury, now you're a liability to that team. So you're going to suck up the injury and not even let anybody know a lot of times if it's a small injury. So that becomes habit. And the next thing you know, the injuries become bigger. Like the free fall thing. I told you about, I broke my back in free fall school in the very first night jump. And I didn't know for a fact it was broken, but I figured it was because I hit the ground the way I hit, knees first, felt a shock up my back, but I was able to stand up and walk. And I went through the rest of the OTC pipeline like that and didn't realize I had broken my back until years later when the back started really bothering me again. And I got x-rays and MRIs and it had been broken.
That's a good kind of story, man, because it's like, it was painful to hear. Will you explain what happened real quick? I forgot about that.
Yeah. So military freefall, when you're used to jumping static line, the canopy kind of comes straight down. So you get your feet and knees together and PLF and fall over. Same thing with military freefall. You want to PLF, but the canopy's driving you forward, and it's a lot faster than you realize until the first time you do it at night. You're like, oh my God, the ground's coming fast. So you try to flare it, and I tried to have my feet and knees together, but I had my feet tucked up too much, and because of the forward motion, my feet just collapsed, and I went straight to my knees, and it sent that shock straight up my back, and I felt literally like an electric shock up my back. And I was like, oh God. And I lay down on the ground. They tell you to turn your strobe off if you're okay. Because if you're jacked up, you leave your strobe on, the medics come and treat you. So I'm like, okay. And they're like, turn your strobe off. And I'm like, stood up. I'm like, I think I'm all right. And I turned my strobe off, walked off the drop zone, finished the course, finished the entire OTC pipeline. And I noticed some little issues here and there, but I was able to finish through the whole thing. I don't know. My body, I guess, just locked it all together with muscles.
Yeah. And just for all my listeners out there that aren't in the military, the difference between like airborne as you're jumping out of a C-130 on a static line. So inside the airplane, I mean, you're hooked up to like a line. When you jump out the door, it kind of automatically deploys your parachute. How high are you jumping on static?
Anywhere from 800 to 1,200 feet, roughly 1,500 maybe at the most.
Yeah. And military free fall, you're jumping around anywhere from 12,000 feet to what? Up to
35,000 feet.
And you're jumping with 100 plus pounds of gear, plus oxygen. We talked about a HAHO earlier. So
nighttime with night vision and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of give a little background to some of my listeners. Bro, let's talk about the mental health thing, dude. That's a big topic on this podcast. I know for both me and a lot of our listeners. I mean, mentally, bro, you've got 18 deployments. Your Mosul deployment alone could break people. When did the weight hit you, and how did you wrestle it down, bro?
It didn't really hit me until like after I got out. It's weird. I was teaching the military freefall stuff as a contractor, and I was pretty fine there. But then I ended up, COVID happened, and a lot of contracts dried up, and I was kind of ready for a break anyway. So I was like, okay, I took that transition to a new company. I worked for a company called Augustine Consulting as a contractor, and that was totally not what I was used to. Excuse me, it was more of a desk job. So now I'm not out training the dudes. So I think psychologically I was always in the fight. And then when I got out of the fight, I was training others to be in the fight. And now I was not doing anything. So I felt like I had no value. And I started not being happy, not liking life. COVID sucked. You have to fly on a plane with your face strapped down with a freaking mask on it. People ragging you. So I was just pissed at the world. I was angry. I was like a porcupine walking around bristled up. And man, I was in pain because I was taking all these pain meds, all this stuff, my whole military career. When I got out of the military, see you later, son. That whole opioid crackdown, civilian doctors wouldn't prescribe it to me. So I got completely cold turkey, came off of all these pain meds that I was using to cope with pain. I'm like, oh, dang. So then I started having to mess with marijuana for pain. And I think it's a good way to manage it if, done it responsibly. But all these different things started coming to a head. So now I don't have anything that I think I'm of value because I'm not training dudes for combat. And then the pain's catching up with me and all that kind of stuff. And it was bad, man. I started drinking hard to cope with anxiety, drinking hard to cope with the pain. And I was just kind of standoffish. I was traveling all the time. And then when I came home, me and my wife were fighting all the time. She didn't trust me, but she didn't have any reason to trust me either. Because I was just, she could look at me and tell me I was bad. I was a bad guy. I was drinking, partying, going out, acting crazy. Even though I never cheated on her or anything, but I was just not living the lifestyle that I should have been. So we fought all the time. And so I ended up studying the Bible. I got so pissed at God because I was like, why is my life like this? Why does it suck so bad? I was pissed at God. And I said, well, I'm going to start studying the Bible to prove that this is fake. So I started studying the Bible hardcore. Man, I'd study, you can ask my wife, and I'd chuck it across the room. I'd study it and sling it again. I'd get so pissed. I would curse God. I've said things that you can't imagine that I would never have said to a human being. I've said to God. I wish I could take it back, but hey, I couldn't. But I used to get mad, and I just kept studying the Bible. And luckily that started helping me, man. It started cleansing me. The Bible says you can be washed by the water of the word. And I really believe that to be the case, because when I studied the Bible to prove that it was fake, it proved to me that it was real. And it's amazing.
That's something, we talked about last night till the wee hours. We were talking a lot about that. There's an atheist, I can't remember his name, but he basically set out to write a book to disprove the Bible and ended up proving the Bible was right. Or maybe he wrote the book because of that. I think it's called The Case for Christ.
It is. Yeah, I can't remember that dude's name.
Yeah, me neither.
I can't either. I can see his face, but I can't remember his name.
What religion and Christianity is a big part of your life, and it's a lot of what you and I have talked about amongst other things. When did how long has faith played a role in your life?
Well, I grew up in a Christian family, going to church, Southern Baptist. We grew up Southern Baptist, doing all that. Went to church Sundays, Sunday evenings, sometimes Wednesday evenings. We didn't go every time the doors were open, but we did every Sunday for the most part, and sometimes on Sunday evenings and Wednesdays. I sang in the choir as a kid. I loved it. I traveled, went to the Sunday school camps or like church camps or whatever in the summertime, and enjoyed that stuff. And I listened to it. I went to Sunday school, but it just never soaked into me, I guess, right? And then as I got older, joined the military, I'm more worried about partying, chasing after girls and all these different things, seeking after my career, being a bad to the bone dude. God was not even in the picture. So I didn't even go to church, didn't even think about it. Yeah, I wasn't against it. I just didn't have time for it. Well, then I got older, and my wife and I've been married multiple times, but started going to church again once I got married. And then with Kendall, when we got married and had a kid, I was like, yeah, we need to be in church. This is the right thing to do. It just felt right. So we started going to church, but I didn't read my Bible or studied. I've tried reading it here and there, but it just wasn't interesting to me. I didn't like reading the Bible. And so I just, went about that. And then after I retired and I really started studying, I lost my job. I was down in the dumps. Everything was bad. It's like God takes those experiences when you're humbled, when you're all the way down here at the lowest of the low, then he's like, hey, what about me? And he reaches out to you. And so that's what was happening. He was compelling me to study the scriptures, and I didn't want to hear it. I was getting pissed and chucking it. And my wife, I was demonically possessed, man. I was drunk, not partying, but I was drinking like crazy every night at home just to cope with everything. And my wife would say the most minor thing, and we'd get in a fight. But we did that. And then afterwards, because my wife, who I'm supposed to defend and support, saw me in that weakened state, and then my daughter saw me in that weakened state, I'm like, what use am I to them? How embarrassing is this? This dude that did all this in the military can't even hold my own family together. So then I'd get mad, and I'm like, you know what? I'm out of here. I'd go grab my Glock, and I'd be like, hey, I'm about to blow my brains out. And I didn't want to die, but I felt like such a failure that I just need to get out of the world. I can't live with the fact that I couldn't handle this situation. So, dude, I've had a Glock to my head snatching the slack out of the trigger of a loaded Glock hundreds of times, dude.
Talk to me about that mental process, bro.
Dude, the only thing that saved me was God. Because, dude, you know how much that, you snatching the slack out of a trigger, the slightest little bit, it could go. But the mental thing for me was that everything was good until we got in a fight. And when I couldn't control my emotions, where I blew up on my wife and physically harmed my wife and things like that, I was like, what? And it was a demonic thing, dude. It was a demonic possession, because when it was over with, I wouldn't remember what I did. My wife would video it. My eyes were pitch black. My mom's videoed it. Dude, when this would happen, my eyes would turn pitch black. And it's rage. I mean, dude, veins are poking out of my face. Dude, I'm like superhuman, flipping things over. It's just insane. And then pulling the gun to my head. And then once the rage calms down, it's like, that was me. My wife would show me a video. I'm like, there's no way I did that. She'd show me video. And I'm like, wow. And she's like, you're demonically possessed. And I'm like, man, I guess I am.
Were a lot of those times driven, were you under the influence or?
A lot of times, yeah. I was on... Dude, almost every night I was drinking alcohol, and I didn't drink to get drunk. I had a super high tolerance. So I was drinking a 12-pack of beer was just a relax thing for me. So I drink 8, 10, 12 beers a night, or a bottle of whiskey, and it was just chilling and crank it. Back in the day, I was doing that with 4 10 milligram Ambiens to go to sleep at night. So I probably destroyed my liver, all these pills and alcohol it did. But yeah, a lot of those fights happened while I was under the influence, or something of that matter, man. It's usually at nighttime, because, my wife, and I still get on to her about it, none of us are perfect, but she likes to bring up issues right at bedtime. I'm just like getting ready to fall asleep. I'm like dozing off. She's like, you know what pisses me off? I'm like, really? Right now? And I just get raged out about it. It still bothers me to this day when she brings up stuff at bedtime, but I handle it better now. I don't lose it.
Somebody out there is listening to this and they've experienced what you've talked about or they're experiencing it. What do you say to that person that, you know, is on the ledge, contemplating suicide, contemplating ending their life? You know, they've transitioned. They used to do something. They're not that person anymore. They can't seem to find an answer or whatever. What do you say to them, Mike?
I say just realize that none of us are perfect, man. Like, I don't care how bad to the bone you were, like in what unit you ever were, and none of us are perfect. We're flawed human beings. The things that we did brings baggage onto us. And then when we step out of that, we have to figure out how to deal with it. So I think the biggest thing there is to seek God, man. But don't give up, and there's no reason to end your life. You know, I've seen it where like people in their lives and the cascade effect for their family members and how it tears them up is crazy, man. So that's not the route you want to go. And we can overcome it all. We can grow better. Like, I've done that probably 100 times. I've had blowups like that, and now I don't do it anymore. So
what tools, practical or emotional, have you learned to help rebuild you mentally post-service? Just funny because you and I were literally just having this conversation off camera.
Yeah. Well, for me, like I said, I studied the Bible, man. And some people may think that's stupid, but the book will change you. But you can't just read it. You've got to really study it. So I wanted to try to prove it wrong. So I took studying it hardcore, like reading, studying, you know, going back and forth. And the key thing that I started noticing is that there's prophecy. I thought prophecy was cool. I wanted, like, if this can predict things in the future or has predicted things, that's kind of cool. So I studied that. And through the prophecy, it showed me that book is divinely inspired. And then I guess you know, and then I, like you, I did the toad medicine, the psychedelic stuff. I did the toad medicine. And I think I wasn't a spiritual kind of guy, but I think it showed me that there is a spirit realm out there. And so I think that drove me harder to even study and even more and more and more.
Yeah.
But it helps you, man, because there's things in there that when you read it and you accept it and you impart it into your lives, it cleans your life up, man. It literally changes you supernaturally if you're willing to change. The key is you have to be willing to change. Most people aren't willing to change.
That's a great point. I think I've said that in this podcast. I don't know. I might even have said it every episode, dude. I mean, you got to do the work, dude. Nobody's going to do the work for you, right? I mean, you know, right. Even God, right? Like,
he doesn't do the work
God.
for you.
You got to be open to change, but there's no angel that's going to come out of the mist and grab you. I mean, I'm sure it's happened at some point.
I mean, it even says he's not going to do the work for you. He says you have to pick up your cross and purify yourself through the word. That's what it says. I mean, we're supposed to take the vast majority of this labor on ourselves. He just shows us what's right and guides us when we need assistance, you know?
Yeah. Your first year out kind of still felt like the military. When did civilian kind of sink in, and how did you handle losing that structure?
For me, it was easy. I think because, you know, I spent so much time in RRC. It's kind of like being a civilian anyway, kind of, but yet in the military. And then out the free fall school, it was a lot less military-ish, I guess. So it was easy for me. I didn't really lack the structure. I do miss the guys. I do miss hanging out with the guys and stuff like that. But other than that, I didn't really miss it. It was pretty easy for me to transition. It's been the same thing with me for everything. Like, even like you started off earlier talking about the religion and Christianity is a big part of my life. It was. Now I hate religion. I'm not religious at all. I can't stand religion. Religion is a deception. I believe everything the Bible has to say, and I believe it's all true, but I don't believe religion because they twist it to lead people to destruction. So,
can you explain that context?
Yeah. So there's a lot to it, but when you really start studying the Bible, you'll start seeing that there's a lot of stuff in it that the churches don't teach. For example, we talked about the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ. Everybody knows he was crucified on Friday, resurrected on Sunday. That's what you're taught in church. That's nowhere to be found in the Bible. Nowhere to be found. You know, so we're taught that Sunday is the day of worship. Where's that in the Bible? Nowhere to be found. Saturday is the Sabbath day. And a lot of the churches teach this dispensational doctrine that there's these Jews and then there's these Gentiles, and Gentiles can be sinners all they want. They don't have to obey God and they're still saved. But these Jews, God's going to kill them because they didn't obey him, right? And they have all these laws that they're supposed to obey. And because they can't do it perfectly, God's going to kill them. But the Gentiles can just sin all they want and they're good to go. That's not what the Bible says. It's a false doctrine created by the church, actually created by seminary schools. So the Bible is all about obeying God the Father, and we're protected by Jesus Christ's blood. He protects us so that we can commune with the Father. Because if we try to commune with the Father in our impurity, it could kill us. That's why he can't even hear our prayers. This isn't taught in church. But if you pray to God the Father and you're in sin, it says your prayers are an abomination to him. Yeah. And it actually says he doesn't hear them. But if he did, it would be an abomination to him, because he can't have commune or community with iniquity, which is transgression of his commandments. So that's why we have Christ. That's why he's the door. His blood covers our sins so that now we can change our lives, pick up our cross, follow him, and now we can pray to the Father and he'll bless us by being obedient to him.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful.
There's way more to it than that. I mean, we talked for hours last night, but I can dispute virtually every concept of doctrine taught in the church, and I can show it in the Bible, like cut and dry, that it's not the way that the church teaches it.
What are like one of the main, topics, I guess, maybe main one or two topics that you run across having this conversation with people that, are Christians, dedicated, but don't see the Bible as you see it?
Well, most of the Christians believe what their preacher says, and they don't check it in the Bible. And I used to believe the same way too, but then I started really studying the Bible, and I would go to church, and I would see the preacher teaching from a part of the Bible I just read, and I just read it the other day, and I'm like, this dude's completely wrong. He's not even using the right stuff. So that's the problem. People believe what their preachers say instead of studying their Bible. But we're not supposed to go to church on Sunday. Think about this. Where's Christmas at in the Bible? Where's Easter in the Bible? It's not in there. I will tell you, Ishtar or Ashtaroth worship, which is what Easter comes from, is in the Bible. We're not supposed to do it. Christmas is condemned and things like it in the Bible. We're not supposed to do it. But there are feasts that we're supposed to keep in Leviticus, in the Bible, the feasts of the Lord. We're supposed to keep those. It says they're forever. And if you accept Christ as your Savior, you become grafted into the commonwealth of Israel. So Ephesians chapter 2 says, which means everything that's in Israel applies to us. Israel is not a land over there. That's a country that's made by man. God could care less about bloodlines. God's not racist. He doesn't care whether you're white, black, green, Israeli, African, he doesn't care. If you accept his ways, you can be a member of the kingdom. Think about that. If you move to a new country, like an Afghan wants to move here, like, hey, bro, these are the laws that apply. You have to abide by these laws to be an American citizen. It's the same with God's kingdom. When you accept him, you have to abide by his rules to be in his kingdom. If you're not in covenant with him. And when he comes back, if you're caught in that position, it won't be good for you. And he just tells us what to do. The Bible tells us what to do. Then he sent his son, because people twisted it all, and said, hey, walk it perfectly, to show them physically how to do it. So he came and lived it perfectly to show us how to do it and asked us to do the same as him.
Yeah, pretty powerful. Anything else you want to share, kind of? Yeah, it's really, we talked for literally hours last night, and I'm trying to
1:30 in the morning, 2:00.
Yeah, you actually brought up things I hadn't thought about, considered, and I'm just trying to recall some of the more salient points of that conversation. Is there anything that kind of sticks out in your brain? Maybe some of the things that we talked about that you think are good for a larger audience?
Yeah, I would just say for the larger audience, if you're in church out there, you're going to church, study your Bibles for yourselves. And if you want help and you want me to point this stuff out to you, if you really want to seek the kingdom of God, reach out to me and I'll show you some stuff. Don't trust what I say either. Go look at it for yourselves, but I can assist you with that. It's just bottom line. Now that I know the Bible as well as I do, it's pretty simple. It's just obey God. That's it. Just obey him. You know what I mean? And we're going to make mistakes. We're not going to do it perfectly. He actually gives us a standard of perfection, but he understands that we're going to make mistakes because we live in a fallen world, so.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to link, when we release this on YouTube and Spotify, whatever, we're going to, for those of you who don't know, Mike has a YouTube channel where he, teaches, the Bible and all the different things kind of that we just discussed here. So we'll link your YouTube channel, your Instagram, so that folks that are interested and want to further this conversation with you, I know I'm going to continue to learn, but also, to do exactly what you said. I've gone to church my entire life. Now I strayed for quite a while. I think church was kind of forced down my throat for, in my youth years. And, I kind of ran from it, for a while, and then I kind of came back, but I'm also guilty of, you go to the church and, we talked about it last night and, I'm learning, so I don't know that I have a total position, but, if you look at kind of what's happened in the pharmaceutical industry, then you look into doctors and, you and I discussed last night,
That's a good point.
There's some great doctors out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that all doctors are bad and that everybody in Western medicine is the devil. However, if you look at kind of how doctors are trained through the academic system, well, who funds the academic system? The pharmaceutical, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think one of the things that you and I discussed last night about religion, about pastors, that, pastors get a lot of their teaching from seminary school. Well, who's teaching, where?
And the seminary schools don't teach the Bible. They teach Greek philosophy. The Bible specifically condemns us from following philosophy.
But you talked about that last night. Can you bring that point up of kind of like the funding of the seminaries, or like who started it?
Doing Christmas, a pagan practice. Doing Easter, a pagan practice. Worshiping on Sunday comes from the church fathers. 300 years, 200, 300 years after Christ had already ascended to heaven. So they all called themselves Platonists, like they believed in Plato. They were followers of Plato and followers of Socrates. And they based the way that they understood scripture off of Greek philosophy. That's what the modern church is. Modern Christianity, Catholicism, all that, it's Greek philosophy. It's Greek philosophy with a little bit of Bible sprinkled into it. And the Bible explicitly forbids us from mixing anything in with the scripture. Like, we're not supposed to add anything or take anything away. That's why, like, there are 7 feasts. They're not, people are like, oh, we don't keep the Jewish feasts. They're not Jewish feasts. They're the feasts of Yahweh, the Most High God. He says to keep them forever. Not only that, another thing that people don't realize, so all that false doctrine comes from people who are pagans, who weren't even believers, but they're called church fathers because they dabbled in the Bible, but they were philosophers. But yeah, refocus me. You got anything else to?
Well, I mean, is it your understanding that that modern theology and these seminaries, is that based on these church fathers?
It is. Yeah, it really is. All the doctrine comes from there. It's like, hey, there's these Jews and then there's these Gentiles and all. None of this stuff, I can dispute it all with scripture very easily. But yeah, man, bottom line is there's the doctrine being taught in the church or churches comes from seminary schools. It's Greek philosophy. And a lot of these pastors don't know better. I have 2 or 3 pastors that have left their churches because they've seen what I've teach on YouTube. And they were like, dude, you're preaching what the pure Bible says. Dudes have called me out, dudes that'll probably see this, like, hey, you're preaching what the Bible says purely. And they said that they believed the Bible like that. They went to seminary school, went off down a rabbit hole. And then when they saw one of my teachings, they were like, wait a minute, that's the truth. And they bailed out of their churches because they were like, I can't do this. And here's the thing.
Kind of like doctors who've left the medical profession.
Yeah. And it's like, we're supposed to worship God, right? Right? That's what we're told, worship God, but nobody knows what worship is. The Bible tells us what worship is. It's not playing music and having a good old time. It's actually keeping Passover, keeping the Sabbath and the other feasts. That's how we worship. The Bible says if you do those things, you have the mark of God. And then you don't have the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is the opposite of that. False worship, false pagan practices, keeping Christmas, Easter, and doing all these pagan traditions that are not condoned and are actually forbidden in the Bible.
That's interesting.
And think about it. Like, I try to tell people, like, I debate people over this all the time. And I'm like, think about it. The church that you espouse, you admit they do pagan holidays, but you believe everything else they teach. You know what I mean? You've never even heard of the feasts that are in the Bible, but you keep pagan ones and you worship on the wrong day and you understand that that's all true, but you still believe everything else they teach. I'm like, come on, man. It's a deception, just like everything else, just like Big Pharma. They're deceiving us to be poisoned so they can make more money off of us,
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I just want to make it clear, dude, I don't think, a lot of these church pastors mean to, whatever, man. I know tons of great people.
They're deceived too, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of them are deceived. There are some that are not. And that's some of these big ones up there. Yeah, they're not. But a lot of these local churches, they're just deceived too. And these guys will eventually wake up, hopefully.
When did the Bible kind of become your compass? And, was there a breaking point in war or after that kind of sparked it?
Yeah, it was well after I got out of the military. So it's probably around 2020 when I started studying it. And then, yeah, man, I just try to spend as much time in it every day as I can. I build Bible studies for our weekly sermons. So I spend a good bit of time there. I try to read the Bible every day. And then just ministering to people, just being in the ministry and ministering to people forces me to study even more. So I grow and grow and grow every day because I have, hundreds of dudes that reach out to me from all over the world. Maybe, people from YouTube and all over the place that hit me up and they ask questions, and it forces me to get into the scripture and learn even more to be able to explain in better depth. So just get stronger and stronger every day.
Starting a church community, what called you to lead others spiritually, and how did combat kind of shape that mission for you?
Well, I think combat and being a Ranger shaped me into a natural leader. So that's the easy part. But then how do you lead? You have to know how to be a leader, right? I know how to shoot bad guys and stuff like that, but I had to know the Bible if I'm going to lead people in obedience to it. So that took a process. I started studying the Bible really hardcore in 2020. And by 2022 or so, we had pulled out of the church because I was debating my preachers. I was questioning the preachers. I'm like, hey, dude, what's up with this Sabbath day thing? What's up with these feasts? Why don't we do these? Why are we keeping these pagan holidays? And they're like, oh man, don't worry about none of that stuff. I'm like, but we're supposed to worry about it. So I started realizing that we pulled out of the church, and then it was just me, my wife, and my daughter. We didn't have anybody to hang out with because we couldn't go to church when we know that they're teaching. It's hard for people to hear out there, but it's Antichrist doctrine. We pulled out of that and we just sat at home and did our own little Bible studies and did our own little Sabbath services at the house. And then we heard about this Messianic church, Messianic fellowship. We went there for a little bit, found that they were too into much Judaism and stuff. So then we left that church because they kept the Sabbath, they kept the feast, but they were into a lot of Judaism stuff, which is not biblical either. So we pulled out of that, and some of the people from there came with us and came to our house. We started doing home church. We did that for a while. We had 3 or 4 families that met together for a few months. And then there was a disagreement in there. Some of those people came against me even in that group because I preached. These people were new believers, just found out the truth. I'd probably been on a little longer than they had. And so one of the families was going to keep Christmas and stuff. And I said, hey, Christmas is a pagan holiday. And I laid out a sermon, and all the women cried, and they were like, we'll never do Christmas again after hearing that. And I'm like, dang, that's good. But then they started talking about doing Hanukkah, which is a Jewish feast. It's not biblical. I said, that's the same thing as Christmas. It's just a different variant. So they got all pissed at me. So that group broke apart, and it was me and the wife and kid again back at the house. Actually, some of those people still stayed in fellowship with us for a while, but some of them left. Then all of a sudden we met some other people, and it's just started growing more and more. And I started doing it on YouTube. I just started I'll do the videos and put them on YouTube. People told me I should do it. And I was like, I was just sending them Word documents of these presentations I would make. And people were like, why don't you make a video of it? So I started making it a video, putting them on YouTube. And now, yeah, we meet at the house. We have a couple families that meet with us every weekend, sometimes more. We have people that drive sometimes 2.5 hours away just to hang out with us for church. And occasionally we'll travel to other places too. There's a fellowship in Milton that we like to go to in Milton, Florida. We'll go there sometimes. Our whole group will go there and fellowship with them, but it's good, man. And it just naturally works, man. All the people believe the same way we believe. It's the greatest fellowship. And the people that are in our church group, I literally consider them closer to me than some of my family.
What's the toughest doubt you faced as a pastor? How'd you overcome it?
Doubt? That's an interesting. Well, I think would probably be in the beginning when I started seeing these things in the Bible that I was never taught in church. And when I saw how important they were, it's easy to doubt whether that's the right path or not, because when you go on that path, it requires you to pull out of the church. It requires you to start doing things on Saturday, setting apart the day of Saturday versus Sunday. The whole world is against it. Everything's on Saturday, right? So it's a big step. And so I was doubting, is this the right path? Am I deceived? So I would really double checked and second checked and, or assessed myself, reassessed the situation. And then I was like, you know what? This is right. This is literally what the scripture says. And then I started finding other dudes teaching the same stuff. And guess what? For you guys out there on TV, it's veterans, man. It's predominantly veterans that are preaching the biblical truth. Like I got a SEAL Team 6 buddy who preaches it. I got other Ranger buddies that preach it. I've met like SF dudes that are preaching it. So a former Marine, I learned so much from that guy on YouTube. He's got a channel called Parable of the Vineyard, super solid guy. I learned a lot from him. There's a lot of people out there, and that finally gave me the confidence that I was on the right path.
You're online teaching the Bible from the dirt. Most don't know Tier 1 had sports psychologists and conditioning professionals. How'd those tools help you find this pastor's peace or build your digital flock?
Well, I think it's just the planning and preparation and preparedness and the professionalism that we have. And like, I'm used to getting up in front of people and briefing people. So being up and standing in front of people at the pulpit and like preaching on camera, it's not a big deal for me. So it set me up for that. I knew how to use computer and Word docs and stuff from being in the military. So it made it easier for that stuff as well. I think that's it, man. And just being a natural, like if you're in the military that long in a special operations unit, you're a leader. You know what I mean? You're a leader.
Yeah. Is there any sermon or lesson you've preached that echoes kind of your military life, maybe leadership or sacrifice or?
Let me think about that. Well, I mean, the entire Bible is a war manual. It literally is. Military guys can get it better than anybody. Because, God, Yahweh, the Father, is a man of war. And like, he wants us to obey a certain way, but he destroys those who are against him. And it's literally like, I mean, he's very specific. Like, in the military, you're told, hey, you need to do this. You need to go 10 feet up here, turn a half left, go 5 feet that way, turn a quarter right, like very specific, detailed instructions. That's the way God is. His instructions are very specific and detailed. So like for military guys, we're like, hey, this is kind of like following an FM manual. It's literally the same thing. So all of the stuff that's in there, it's all about leadership. He's teaching us to follow him. He's the leader and he's teaching us how to follow. And it's all written in the book. He's got the instructions in the Old Testament of the book to teach us how to follow him. Then in the New Testament of the book, he's got his son doing it to show us a physical example of how to do it.
How do you deal with that paradigm, dude, in the Bible with war and peace, right? I mean, God, you hear all the time, God's the God of peace, the God of love, which I believe he is, but there's some pretty violent encounters in the Bible. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you wrestle with that? Or how do you talk to people who wrestle with that?
So, Yahweh the Father sent Saul in to kill all the the parasites, the Jebusites, all those weird names in the land of Canaan. Those were not God's people. Those were Nephilim bloodline, or actually Raphaim is the actual word. So the fallen angels came from heaven. We talked about that, the book of Enoch, Genesis, and all that kind of stuff. The fallen angels come down. They mated with women and produced offspring called Nephilim. They were giants, massive giants. They found them all. They found giant skeletons 400 feet tall, 300, 400 feet tall, all over the place. After the flood, some of that lineage passed on and they became Raphaim is what they were called. And these were the giants. These were the seed of Satan. These had the fallen angel seed in them. And God sent Saul to destroy them all. He killed them all. It's because they weren't his people. They were demonic fallen angel entities. That's why he said to kill them all. But Saul actually disobeyed. And instead, Yahweh took his kingship from him and said that he was basically, worthy of witchcraft, because the Bible determines disobedience to God is the same as witchcraft. It's just choosing our own ways over his. Like, that's the thing, like more modern witchcraft. I just did a sermon on this not too long ago, is like, there's white magic and black magic. Well, people think some of this stuff is good. You can use magic to heal people, but when there's people that use magic, satanic powers to heal people, and it seems good because you're like, hey, it's healing people. It has to be good. But they're accessing these powers while being disobedient to Yahweh, and that's called witchcraft. It's selfishness. And we're supposed to shirk off all self. And it's hard to do, especially for guys like us. We're hardcore. It's all been about self the whole time. Not necessarily self, but we had to be a powerful person to do the things that we did. And to then cast all that off and say, it's not about me, it's about what he wants. That's the hard part. And we have to do it. It's about obedience to him, not what we want.
How did your wife, like when you made this transition, especially as you're transitioning, churches, how was that conversation with her? And especially as you have a daughter, right? That's, younger, but, aware of what's going on in the world now. And how was that?
Well, at first, my wife grew up Pentecostal, like Assembly of God kind of church. And at first she was like, "You're demon possessed. This isn't what the Bible says." And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it is, but I wasn't 100% sure myself. I found that, and I know it straight said this in the Bible, but I was like, did I understand what it actually meant? So I just kept studying. I started showing her more stuff and showing her more stuff and showing her more stuff. And then eventually she was like, you know what? You're right about this. She started seeing it herself. And then now she's fully on board. We agree 100% on all of that stuff.
Yeah. Let's talk about your wife for a second. I mean, she's endured quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you guys been married?
13 years, roughly. Yeah.
So she's like, been an anchor through the ups and downs of you as you were the warrior, transition. You're still a warrior, but you transition and you're no longer doing those things and you're having these struggles. I mean, you mentioned some pretty, some personal things. How have you guys worked through that together as a couple? And how has that, strengthened your relationship?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, when you go to combat with somebody, you've been through rough times. You've been through the crucible, the pain and the blood and the sweat and tears, and it makes you bond. I think it's the same with my wife and I. Like, we went through all that brutal stuff and we came out of it and we love each other more now. And I'm, this is a process. When you study the scriptures and it cleans you, it's called a sanctification process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a little bit here and there. And every single day I get gentler. I get more compassionate. I'm not a compassionate person. Like, your leg gets chopped off. I'm like, hey, put some pressure on that thing. That's me with anybody. Even my kid would probably be like that, but I'm not like that. I'm starting to get a little bit more compassion. And that's through, the scriptures just healing me, taking away the hardness that the military put on me and the things that we train. But I think that's the key point, just trying to continue to overcome every single day. She has things still to overcome. I still have things to overcome. None of us are perfect. I think the biggest thing that affects me still is anger. It's nowhere near as often as it used to be, but it still happens. There's still times where I'm like, she'll say something and I just rage. And I'm like, I can control it more now. But back in the day, I couldn't control it. It would rage out of control until like Cat 5 hurricane destroying the house. But now I'll start to rage and I can ratchet it back. It's a lot easier to ratchet it back, and it's getting easier and easier every single time. It's a learning process, and I learn, and part of it is that I understand that she's not the enemy. It's the other things that we're dealing with, the spiritual attacks that's the enemy. And I take it out on her a lot of times. So now I see that and I don't do it as much.
What do you think has kept her by your side through some of this madness?
I have no clue. She's a strong, strong woman. I'd say that my wife, I like to tell people, I've said this several times, she's the most valorous human being I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen anybody go through this stuff. This dude, this killing machine that used to hunt bad guys, was full bore after her, and she stood against me. And not only did she didn't hate me for it, she prayed for me through it. Like, the Bible says to love your enemies, right? It even says, Jesus says that, to love your enemies. Dude, my wife loved her enemy. I mean, I don't know how she did it, because when somebody treats me that way, I can't be compassionate to them. That's what I try to learn from her. I'm like, how can you be compassionate when I'm such a jerk? But I'm trying to learn that, man. She's so compassionate. I just can't imagine. Like, she loved me when I was her worst enemy. Yeah.
You've, you explained some pretty close personal battles that you and her shared. And, I'm sure there's a lot of guys out here listening to this that are struggling with their spouses and going through it. What would you tell, yourself 5, 8, 10 years ago as you're raging against your spouse? you have this opportunity to, have your current self talk to your old self, what would you say?
I would say as soon as you feel that build up, take a deep breath. As hard as it is, it's so hard. Take a deep breath, calm down, and say, hey, I'm going to step away for a second and walk away. That's what I ended up doing. That's what worked for me. I would get, the marijuana, I think, really saved my life for a little while, because that stuff, I would get super angry, and then I'd roll outside, eat me a little bit of gummy, let that thing kick in, and I'd be like, all right, I love y'all, I'm back. And it wouldn't blow up. But I had to get out right away. And that's the hard part, because a lot of the times with my wife, she wouldn't let me get out. So I'm trying to get away so that I don't freak out, and she's chasing me. But now she's gotten better at letting me go. And then I just go, decompress for a little bit, come back. But yeah, that's the key, man. Just don't engage while you're raged out. Let the rage wear off, because that rage that comes in you is a demonic attack. It is. Whether you're possessed or oppressed, it's a demonic attack. It's coming through you to engage your wife, to cause her to elicit attacks on you, to make you fight. That's all it is. We have to realize the Bible says we don't fight against flesh and blood, but it's about principalities and powers and superior, angels and demonic entities. That's what it is. So when my wife is coming at me and it offends me, I have to think about, Christ said, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do when they're on the cross. It's because he knew that demonic entities were controlling them to kill him. It's the same thing when my wife says something that offends me. I try to look at it as the fact that it's not her, it's a demonic entity using her to attack me. And if I let it be successful, it wins. So that's the key. So now I'm just like, take a deep breath. I can't let the demon come through me and go back at her. And you just got to end it. And sometimes I still come at her, and then she stops it. So we've become better as a team now, where sometimes when I can't de-escalate, she de-escalates. And then now I de-escalate sometimes when she can't de-escalate.
Yeah, I think you and I were talking, I don't know if it was last night or whenever, but, one of the things I learned is that, I always thought marriage was 50-50. You give 50, they give 50. What we've learned in the last couple of years is marriage is 100-100. I think when both spouses are giving everything they can, which, look, man, you're not going to show up every day at 100%. Mm-hmm. But that's when, on the day that you show up and you got 27% to give because you're just smoked from work, mentally, whatever, and your wife's given, I think it's, that's kind of where we help lift each other up and pick each other up. One of the questions I like to ask, certain guests, especially guests, you and I have talked a lot about kind of what your family means to you, especially your wife. And, you have expressed a lot to me, how important she is to you, et cetera, et cetera. I always like to give an opportunity. I mean, if you could say something to your wife now, what would you tell her?
I'm so thankful that she has stayed with me all these years, because I didn't deserve it. Nobody deserved someone to stay with them when they treated them that way. I didn't mean to treat them that way. It was a demon working through me. And the same with my daughter. My daughter didn't deserve to see the crap that she saw. And I love them both with all my heart, all my mind. And like I tell them, I tell them now, when we start getting little tussles, because we still get in arguments, I'm like, check it out. We're a team. I tell them, I don't care about anyone outside of this house. If they all disappeared, even our family members, I love our family members, but this is my core group. We have to be strong together. And I tell them, I'm like, I can do anything with you two by my side, but if we're not together, it makes things challenging. And that's all I care about. I love them. I love my wife and my daughter more than anybody in this world. And I love my family as well, but they're my close group. You know what I mean?
Yep. Anna Lee. Straight A kid, self-starter. How did Ranger discipline shape your parenting, and what's your proudest dad moment?
Well, I've just tried to take her out and treat her the way that I think a kid should be treated. She's finally big enough now she can hold a rifle, a bigger rifle. So she's been shooting for a little bit. She's right off the bat. My proudest dad moment was the very first couple times I took her shooting. She's nailing targets. I'm like, whoa, this is easy. I don't even have to teach her anything. She can hit targets. But then it was like, but she had to have a prop and everything because she couldn't hold the gun. Now she can hold the gun. And the next proudest thing was last year. She went out with my friend Austin and killed her first turkey on our place. And it was so awesome. She had hunted all morning. She came back home. Austin left. He's like, man, we didn't see one. We chased them all over the place. We couldn't get them. He goes to the north side and he calls me back. He's like, hey, if she still wants to hunt, tell her to come up here on the four-wheeler. I got another turkey. So I send her back up there. She'd already hunted 6 hours, goes back out again, smokes a turkey, killed her first deer this year as well. So yeah, I'm proud of her. She's she's an asset to the family, not a liability as a child, you know?
That's awesome, dude. Deployments missing chunks of her life. Any memory of coming home that captures what you fought for?
You know, honestly, I didn't like, she was a baby when I was deploying. I mean, she's only 12 now. So she was a baby when I was deploying. So I didn't miss a whole lot because, I mean, she was just kind of crawling around and stuff anyway. But yeah, really coming home to that family. At the time, I didn't realize how important that family was. Now I do. But you know, doing that fighting over there and protecting our country or whatever, you know, at least I was protecting my family, the people I really love the most.
Yeah, I talk about it a lot with guys now. I mean, my shift is definitely focused in my life on how important my own family is. And, you know, I tell people all the time, dude, that are chasing all these other things. I mean, look, man, money makes the world go round. We got to pay bills, you know, we got things to do, but you know, I remind people constantly, dude, like everything else is a distraction from your family. You know what I mean?
It
like,
really is. Yeah, it really is.
You got into homesteading, man, you know, kind of slowing down for family. How's that shift kind of redefined happiness for you?
It's good. I like the pace. The only issue is that we kind of just do it on the side now because I'm too busy with work and other things to really fully do it. But my goal is to eventually transition to where we're completely self-sufficient on the homestead, and then for side money, well, you'll sell the excess. Because I mean, I just want to be to where, I don't know, I like living a simple life, man.
I can definitely.
And I don't want to be dependent on anything. I don't want to be dependent on grocery stores. I don't want to be dependent on anything if I don't have to.
Yeah. Well, kind of wrapping up this interview, we've talked about a lot of different things, man. Your little bit of your early childhood, going into the Ranger Regiment, dude, 18 combat deployments, RRC, you know, working at Military Freefall School, your transition. If you could sum up your journey this far in your life in one sentence for someone who'll never live it, what would you say, dude?
Good grief, what a question. In one sentence. It's been an arduous journey, but I can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. I guess I don't know. That's a lot to summarize in one sentence.
That one was going to be fun. I like throwing questions out like that, man, just to see people's response. What's next, dude? You got, you know, possible homestead expansion, church growth, or something that we haven't guessed?
Yeah, man. Church is growing slowly but surely. We've even been talking about getting a building because our house is getting a little too small at times. But yeah, looking forward to that. I mean, online stuff's growing. Yeah, man, I'm just looking to expand and have more access to reach out. Like I'm doing this stuff with Titan Performance. I told you about that now. Mm-hmm. Some guys that I've been linking up with, doing some mentorship with, and that's kind of good. We've got, so for the guys that are out there, if anybody's watching this, wants to join the military, join a special operations unit, reach out as well. Or you can reach out to Titan Performance. We have coaches. We have dudes that have been in these units, that have been through all this adversity that you're going to ever encounter in the military to help guide you along. Physical fitness training, the mental, the spiritual aspect, all aspects of it. So that's a new thing for me. I'm enjoying it. Got to hang out with a few Rangers last week as well. And I'm hoping that expands and we get to do a lot of good work. I mean, not just mentoring the young dudes, but here's the thing. These old guys, like these sergeant majors, some of my buddies who are still in, we can help them a lot too. Because one of the interesting things, and I know you probably know, when you go to retire from the military, you can't ask the sergeant major how to do it because he hasn't done it, right? You can only ask retirees. So guys like me can help those older guys as they're transitioning out. Not only that, I guarantee you they're going to encounter a lot of the psychological pitfalls that everybody does when they get out. And we're here to help them through that as well. Not only that, those are the guys, their bodies are beat up and destroyed from a 20-something year career in the military as well. And I think I have the experience to help them mitigate some of that injury stuff and like things that I've learned along the way, tips of the trade to mitigate coming off the pain meds and being more healthy, yet still being able to function, you know? So I'm looking forward to that as well.
That's awesome, dude. What's the legacy you want your church and homestead to leave 20, 50 years from now?
That we created as many disciples as we possibly can. You know, that's what the Bible's all about. Think about it. Let me ask you this question. Have you ever been taught in church how to disciple someone? Do you even understand what that means? Do you know?
I mean, I think I definitely understand what discipleship is, but for sure nobody's ever taught. It's just like, oh, go out, spread the word of God, tell people you're a Christian, but nobody tells you.
That's what they tell. But what is that more specifically? So what that more specifically is teaching people to obey the commandments of God. The Old Testament commandments, the same ones that Christ taught. He didn't change anything. He just showed us how to do it better. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. That's discipleship. Studying to understand how to obey and teaching others to obey as well. So, and that's the key. I want to be known for discipleship. I want people to say, like, these people have spread the word and legitimate truth of the word and obedience and repentance to so many people. That's what I want.
Sounds like we're going to have a follow-up podcast. What's one piece of advice for a young Ranger, a struggling vet, and a searching soul? 3 hats you've worn.
All of them. I'll say, if you want to be a more elite warrior, think about that. It's part of the Ranger Creed, become a more elite warrior, right? There's more aspects to that than I ever knew. I was a physical warrior. I would say add the spiritual aspect to it. It gives you tools that you could use that I never had while I was in the military. I didn't have any clue of that. So I'd say that, and then stay away from the alcohol, stay away from that crap. It sounds good. It's cool and all. You want to drink and party? I did too. I didn't party that much when I was a younger Ranger. It was more later after I got to the freefall school that I did, because out there at the Special Forces world, it's like drunk fest. That's just what they do. And so I became one of them. But stay away from the alcohol. It's cool and all to have a drink here and there, but don't take it the excess. It will get you kicked out of the regiment. It will cause marital issues with you. It's going to cause relationship issues if you have girlfriends, because just stay away from that stuff. It's the number one thing.
Bad decision I've ever made, not everyone, but I would say like 90% of the bad decisions I've made in life were under the influence of alcohol.
Yeah, and I see Rangers do it all the time. Not just Rangers. I mean, and that's the thing. Some of these other units won't kick you out for that stuff. Ranger Regiment will. You get drunk and act a fool, see you later, bud. So don't do it. Just stay away from that stuff. Use it in moderation, if that, It's not healthy for you anyway. It turns to sugar and destroys your arteries, so.
Cool, man. Before we close it out, any last kind of final words for our audience?
No, man, it was enjoyable. I'm glad we got to cover all these different topics, and thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.
Dude, it was an amazing conversation, man. This is one that I'll definitely look back on. I mean, we covered your odyssey, dude. I mean, war's brutality, you being the family anchor and kind of how your wife has kind of helped you through these years, face redemption, right? I think that's important, a massive, important part of your story. We've just received a masterclass in surviving the grind, to be honest with you. So I just wanted to thank you for flying out, for being open. I know you've done a couple other podcasts, but we definitely covered some things that, weren't talked about in other places. And so thank you for being open to have another conversation, about that. Thank you for your friendship. I mean, I've talked a lot in the last couple months, and, I'm still learning from you as well. And I'm, definitely, I'm sure we're going to continue this biblical conversation, in the months and years to come, for sure, dude. So thank you for that info. To everybody out there, man, thanks for tuning in. Another, great episode, dude. I wouldn't have a podcast if it wasn't for you guys. We continue to just get tons of messages, DMs, emails. Keep that stuff coming, man. I love it. I don't think we have this podcast thing figured out. I don't know where it's going, but whether it's a guest recommendation or, a follow-up from a guest, man, we appreciate all the feedback. If this podcast episode helps you in any way, shape, or form, man, the best way we can grow this, send this to a couple people. The YouTube subscribe thing, that helps the channel for sure. I never understood why people are always like, oh, click the link button and subscribe, but that's how we grow the channel. That's how the algorithm pushes this message a little bit farther. If you're listening to iTunes, and Spotify, dude, if you guys could follow us and then just leave us a comment, man. Again, that helps the algorithm push it out. If you guys don't know, we've got merch out now in the store. You can go to the vanguardwall.com. We've got some cool hats, shirts, sun shirts, and all kinds of stuff, man. Sweatshirts, and we're using that to kind of help pay for guest travel and stuff like that. So anyway, man, we got some really cool episodes coming up in the future. There's a bunch of folks coming on that haven't been in other places. We got a guy coming from the 160th, a couple guys coming from the unit, and a bunch of stories in between, man. So keep riding with us, man, and stay safe out there. And if you can't be safe, be violent out here.